to see you in person. How are you?
Gonna get us started here. The December 4th Lane Community College Board of Education regular meeting will now be called to order. Celia, will you please call roll call?
Yes, Kevin Alltucker,
Here.
Denise Diamond,
Here.
Austin Fulnagi,
Here.
Sophie Gibson,
Here.
Steve Mattel,
Here.
Zach Mulholland,
Here.
Julie Weisman.
Here.
We will be moving on to the land recognition. The land acknowledgement speaker for this meeting is Colin Baruch. Colin, will you please provide the recognition?
Thank you. I'd like to start our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya people were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you. We'll be moving on to the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to be made to the agenda? Okay, not seeing any. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
And I'll second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all opposed, say nay. Was that an aye or a nay, Austin? Apologies. You're muted.
That was an aye. I apologize, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, passes unanimously. Please note that the equity lens has been provided in board docs for the board's reference. Do we have any questions or comments to the responses to information requests? Austin.
Hi there. In regards to some of the responses, a question came up of what fund I was referring to, which was the Employee Retirement Fund. And I apologize, I wasn't more specific with my questions. But at the same time, though, I hope that in the future, that if there is more specificity that the cabinet needs from a board member who's asking a question, that there might be just an avenue for us to be able to get that clarification so that we can make sure that we're getting the best possible answers. I don't know what that would look like, if that would be like an email through Celia or through our chair, or even just emailing the board member directly. But yeah, I want to thank the cabinet for the work that they do in answering our questions. But I hope that there's an avenue for, if there's clarification necessary, that clarification could be asked for.
Thank you, trustee. Really appreciate that. Can you hear me? I hope you can. Wonderful. That would come to me. Thank you so much.
So again, this is a cabinet member who might need clarification from a board member of the questions they're asking. Am I making myself clear?
I'm certainly understanding what you're saying.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, not seeing anything. We will now be moving on to public comment. The board may not respond directly to any issues raised during public comment, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. Celia, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we'll go back and forth between in person and online. In person, we have Laura Pelletier, Magenta Inez Lison, followed by Nikolai Anderson.
Good evening. I'm Laura Pelletier, and I'm the Interim Dean of Humanities. And I'd like to say good evening to all of you and our members here. I'm here to promote the reboot of Lane's student newspaper, The Torch, as well as the literary magazine, The Denali. Both are housed in the Humanities Division and under the supervision of Camilla Mortensen, who teaches writing and journalism for us. And I'm at this time going to introduce you to Camilla and cede my time to her and some of our other members of The Torch. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Camilla Mortensen. I know some of you all through teaching at LCC and some of you all through editor of Eugene Weekly, and most importantly here as advisor for The Torch. As Laura said, they've moved back into the humanities. And at a time when social media, newsletters, websites are scattering attention everywhere, a newspaper literally keeps people on the same page, reading headlines they may or may not agree with, but reading all the same headlines and hopefully into the same stories. And that's what we're trying to bring back. In the time I've been teaching journalism at LCC, I've watched students go from prison and rehab to the front page of the Wall Street Journal. We've had a Torch editor who's won the Pulitzer Prize, and it is hugely important to me that we are bringing this back because as a community college, the student newspaper is a venue not only for accountability and truth, but a venue for students to learn how to hold those in power accountable and give voice to the voiceless. And I'm going to turn over to Kat and River.
Okay. Hi, can you all hear me? Okay, my name, oh, will that work? Okay, that's gonna be better. Cool.
Good idea.
Thanks. Hi, my name is River Shepherd. I'm one of Camilla's journalism students in her class right now, and I've been writing for The Torch as well this term. The Torch being brought back has really allowed me to jump into journalism with both feet. I only just decided to switch my major to journalism over the course of this summer. And even though newspapers and journalism is something I've always had a really keen interest in, and I've been an avid reader of the news for probably the last decade. I wasn't really seeing it as a career path for myself until I took Camilla's Writing 121 class, which had a journalism bend to it. And then as soon as I decided, I think I want to actually go to U of O and go to the School of Journalism and Communication, I actually got an email from Camilla saying, hey, I'm going to be teaching journalism again at LCC this fall. Please, if you want to sign up for this class, please do. So I signed right up. I was the first one in the class. Thankfully, more people signed up. And it's just been awesome working in a collaborative environment with Camilla and with the new editor Chandler at The Torch and with Laura. She's been awesome. And I'm just very grateful for this opportunity. I'm learning so much so quickly by being able to just jump right in. So thank you so much.
Hi there. My name is Kat Tabor. I am a writer and social media person for The Torch. I joined The Torch this October, but in just a short time, it has been a truly life-changing experience for me. After speaking with Camila about concert reviews and how to approach them, I've had the opportunity to cover several incredible events. One highlight was interviewing Al Pietrielli, the lead guitarist for Trans-Siberian Orchestra, over the phone and receiving complimentary floor seats to their Portland performance to review it. I also interviewed Vince Kelly from the Golden Girls, The Laughs Continue at the Holt Center, which included tickets to the show. Additionally, I spoke with the band Gangsta Grass over Zoom, who are set to perform at the Holt this January. Beyond this, I have had the chance to connect with the artistic director and performers at the Eugene Ballet regarding their performance of The Nutcracker. Along with this and attending other shows, I've been scheduled to interview Bryce Vine with a photo pass for his show in Portland. On top of that, I have received review tickets for LP Giabli at the Wow Hall, Ballet Fantastique, An American Christmas Carol, Back to the Future the Musical, and just today, I learned that I have gotten 2 review tickets to the sold-out show for Billie Eilish at the Moda Center this weekend. These experiences have been truly transformative, and I cannot express my gratitude enough to The Torch because they have helped me discover my passion for journalism and writing, which has completely reshaped my academic path to focus on journalism as a major. Thank you.
I don't know if Chandler is online. I know he was going to speak if we have that opportunity.
Chandler declined.
Okay. So I'm just want to finish up our time and say that I'm really proud of this group and Camilla. Journalism has not been offered for about, I think, 2 years. And we brought it back this term and it filled. It's great. And we're looking forward to doing it again in spring. So please check in on The Torch and sign up for their newsletter. Thank you all very much.
Magenta.
Hello, my name is Magenta Inez Lyson, and I am a student here at LCC. You are all probably aware that Bigfoot Beverages, our local Pepsi distributor, is on strike. This is in response to, among other things, management attempting to cancel workers' pensions and switch them to 401ks. This move would mean that workers would be forced to contribute thousands of dollars of their own money to even match what the company is currently contributing. And their retirement would be at the whim of the market. Bigfoot workers, represented by Teamsters Local 324, have been on the picket line 24/7 for over 3 months, no matter the weather. Here at LCC, these workers are our neighbors. Many of us pass by their picket line every day on our way to class or work. LCC currently has a contract with Bigfoot Beverages to stock some of the vending machines on our campus. According to LCC's purchase and order terms and conditions, a contract which all vendors to the college must sign, suppliers, quote, shall negotiate and adjust in good faith any and all disputes arising out of the supplier's organization with employees and or unions representing its employees. Suppliers should comply with all federal, state, and local laws, policies, rules, and regulations concerning employment and labor relations, end quote. Bigfoot Beverage is currently in violation of this contract. From the beginning, Bigfoot Beverages refused to negotiate in good faith with the union, and recently Bigfoot has stopped recognizing the union. This both clearly violates federal law and the contract between LCC and Bigfoot. If the board cannot immediately terminate the contract, from what I know, it should be possible to cancel the contract with 1 month's notice. LCC is a pro-union campus. As the area's main trade school, many of LCC students will go into trade unions upon graduation. As an LCC student, knowing the board supports unions means knowing that the board is committed to protecting my future livelihood and those of countless other students. When unions are strong, LCC is strong. Thank you.
Nikolai Anderson. Followed by Lonnie Douglas online.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? My name is Nikolai Anderson. I'm a union carpenter and a member of the Eugene Democratic Socialists of America. Been on the strike line since day one, supporting my Teamsters brothers and sisters. And really, just to echo what Magenta has said, there is illegal union busting tactics at play here. And I went to LCC and I know it is a union campus. I actually went to the carpentry program a bit here before I became a union carpenter. So I know that you understand how important organized labor is. I know that you're allies to organized labor. So please do not be in a contract with somebody who attempts to harm organized labor, because when these workers win, it will be a win for all working class people like us. And if they lose, it will harm people like us, working class people, including your faculty and yourselves. That's all. Thank you very much. And please don't deal with these people.
Lonnie Douglas, followed by Anita Collender and Tizak Arenas.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Lonnie Douglas. I am a member with the Eugene Springfield Solidarity Network. I'm also a veteran who's using my GI Bill to be a full-time student at Lane Community College in the automotive program. Our network has been standing in support of the striking workers at Bigfoot Beverages since the beginning of the strike. I think you all need to be aware that Bigfoot is engaged in some despicable union busting tactics, such as hiring out-of-state scabs, refusing to recognize the rights of their workers, trying to steal their pensions. Eugene and Springfield both are union towns, and we expect businesses in our communities to not engage in anti-worker, anti-union behavior. To that end, I mean, we're asking LCC to terminate its contract with Bigfoot Beverages. By maintaining your relationship with Bigfoot, you would be endorsing the unethical anti-worker, anti-union behaviors that they're engaging in. I work with a lot of, in class, I'm in class with a lot of very young people compared to me. I'm in my 50s and these guys are coming out of high school. These kids are going to be going into, working in garages and they're going to be just regular working class people. And if we allow employers to get away with this kind of behavior, it's these students that will get mistreated, not just the workers at Bigfoot, but all of them. So I hope that that the board and Lane Community College will stand in support, not just with the workers at Bigfoot, but with all working class people, especially with the students that will be graduating from your college. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Anita Collender.
My name is Anita, and I am a former Lane Community College employee, and I graduated from the community college. I strongly encourage you to immediately terminate your contract with Bigfoot Beverages. My husband and his coworkers have been on strike for 77 days now. They're standing out in the cold, the rain, 24 hours a day. Christmas is coming. Families are scared. We're there to oppose Bigfoot's illegal and aggressive anti-union tactics. This fight is no longer about saving our pensions. The company has publicly denounced the union, and they continue to engage in blatant union busting, undermining workers' rights. By maintaining a relationship with Bigfoot, Lane Community College is indirectly endorsing these unethical practices. I ask you to strongly consider some of the values that Lane Community College stands for: community, equity, justice. Supporting a company that disregards these principles sends the wrong message to your students, your staff, your alumni, and the wider community. It's essential to align with businesses that treat employees with dignity and respect, especially at a time when labor rights are under attack. The solution is simple. Please end your contract with Bigfoot Beverages. There are other vendors in town. Stand with these workers. Please don't stand against them. Like she said, you drive by them every day. I know you see them out there. They're ready to go back to work. Your decision is going to make a significant statement about where Lane Community College's commitment is to fairness and ethical partnerships. I urge you to act decisively and align your actions with the values that you promote. Your leadership on this issue will send a huge, powerful message of solidarity with workers fighting for fair treatment. Thank you.
Isaac Arenas.
Yes, good evening, board. My name is Tisoc Arenas. I'm an officer and rank and filer with Teamsters Local 223. We are one of the sister locals to the local party to the agreement with Bigfoot Beverages and our membership that is currently on strike. And I want to punctuate all of the sentiments that have come before mine tonight and some that may come after mine. Concerning this particular strike and the position that Bigfoot Beverages has taken. There's no more eloquent way of putting it than simple union busting. And I'm afraid that we're seeing it throughout the state of Oregon. Bigfoot Beverages is not the first instance of this. If any of you are familiar with Melitus Beverages in Portland, Oregon, a similar situation played out there, where the employer attempted to sever its relationship with the union that represented its employees. And we're seeing the same thing taking place with Bigfoot Beverages. And it shouldn't come as any shock that there's a relationship between Melitus and Bigfoot. So within our organization, within the Teamsters, we're looking at this as a direct attack, not only on our membership, but the working people of Oregon and the communities that those working people support. And I would ask and reiterate what everybody's asked here tonight, to please divest, separate, terminate, however you want to articulate it, the contract that you currently have with Bigfoot. And I believe Magenta articulated quite a bit of good information that could help inform that. So once again, I'm happy to see those in the community and labor churn out here tonight and express what's going on the strike line. It's appreciated. Thank you, board, for your attention on this.
Aaron Bartley, followed by Jerry Minahan and CJ Edwards.
Good evening, members of the board and President Bulger. My name is Erin Bartley, and I teach writing and literature here at Lane. Like all of you, I care deeply about our students, including those students who have come to us from other countries. As a teacher, a union member, and a citizen, I believe that these students enrich our classrooms and our democracy. As we prepare for the new year, however, heavy on my heart is Donald Trump's promise to enact a mass deportation effort upon taking office. With that looming threat in mind, I urge you to affirm and strengthen the commitments made in Resolution 612, passed by Lane's Board of Education in 2017. Titled Resolution on the Protection, Safety, and Sanctuary of All Students, Resolution 612 details Lane's promise, within our sanctuary state of Oregon and in compliance with state and federal law, to provide support for students at risk of deportation. In the resolution, the board begins by confirming the belief of the board, faculty, and staff that, quote, our community, state, and nation are richer as a result of its diverse population. Next, the board directs the president to ensure that, quote, students from other countries and those representing a variety of religious beliefs receive support and assistance and are assured that Lane Community College welcomes them to access higher education at the college. The board then shares a list of actions that they promise Lane will not take. According to Resolution 612, Lane will not, quote, share student records containing immigration or citizenship status without a court order, other legal authority, or evidence of a pending criminal investigation with law enforcement agencies. It will not allow federal immigration officials to perform immigration enforcement exercises on campus without legal authority unless there is a pressing safety issue pertaining to the college or in the surrounding area. It will not, quote, act on behalf of federal agencies to enforce immigration laws or aid in deportation. It will not, quote, allow any college employee during working hours to participate in any voluntary program of immigration enforcement on behalf of federal agents. And it will not, quote, cooperate with any federal effort to create a registry of individuals based on any protected class characteristics, such as religion, national origin, race, or sexual or gender identity. Finally, the board asserts that, quote, the college will protect students from intimidation, unfair investigation, and deportation, and will take every legal measure to support students, end quote, including by protecting students' rights to actively exercise their freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Let us keep our promise to our students by affirming and strengthening the protections detailed in Resolution 612. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Minahan. I'm reading this statement on behalf of nursing faculty Jill Tauschert, who couldn't be here because she's teaching right now. Jill writes, today, and in solidarity with my faculty colleagues, I want to address a critical and urgent issue affecting the well-being of our students and the future of our nursing program: the need to increase mental health support across our campus. This year, our nursing student cohort has been profoundly impacted by the tragic loss of 2 students. These are not just statistics. These were our students' friends, and individuals with dreams of making a difference in the world. Their loss underscores the profound pressures and challenges our students are facing. We are seeing an alarming rise in life stressors: financial burdens, family responsibilities, personal health crises, and the emotional weight of caring for others in their roles as nursing students. On top of these challenges, the rigorous demands of the nursing program push students to their mental and emotional limits. Yet, while the intensity of these stressors has increased, the availability of accessible and timely mental health support has not kept pace. Our students need more than resilience. They need tangible support systems to navigate these challenges. They need counselors who understand the unique pressures of healthcare education. They need safe spaces to share their struggles without stigma. And most importantly, they need us to acknowledge their humanity beyond their academic performance. As educators, mentors, and leaders, our goal is not just to prepare them academically, but to help them succeed holistically. We cannot allow the weight of this program or external pressures to jeopardize their mental health or worse, their lives. I am calling on our institution to prioritize and expand mental health resources, more counselors, extended hours, peer support programs, and initiatives that proactively address mental well-being. Supporting our students is not just an investment in their futures, it is a testament to our commitment as a program and as a community. Together, we can ensure our students thrive, not just as future nurses, but as whole supported individuals. Thank you.
EJ Edwards, followed by Jessica Alvarado and April Myler.
This is kind of cool. Good evening. As a union member and in solidarity with my colleagues, I stand here to advocate for fair compensation for all athletic coaches at Lane Community College. My name is CJ Edwards, and I'm a college basketball coach, a father of 3, and a proud member of this community. I love working at Lane and deeply value what this college represents: learning, diversity, and innovation. Coaching is more than a job. It's a calling. As a 31-year-old Puerto Rican and Black coach with a master's degree, my role is rooted in mentorship, guidance, and leadership. I'm not just teaching basketball. I'm helping young people navigate challenges, develop resilience, and prepare for life. This work demands late nights recruiting, early mornings preparing, weekends at games, and constant support from my players. The financial sacrifices are just as significant. I often use personal funds for recruiting trips. Limited budgets means extra hours fundraising, taking time away from my actual coaching and time with my family. Every trip and late night represents moments missed with my wife and my 3 kids, but I make those sacrifices because I believe in my players and I truly believe in the mission here at Lane Community College. Lane's values are the foundation for my work. Learning. My players just don't learn basketball. They learn to balance academics, overcome adversity, and truly grow as individuals. Diversity. As a Puerto Rican and Black coach, I show underrepresented athletes their unique experiences are valuable and can propel them forward. Innovation. Coaching isn't just about winning games. It's about teaching creativity, adaptability, and giving the young men that I have the pleasure to coach the tools to be successful that will truly last a lifetime. Despite this dedication, coaches' pay at Lane does not reflect the value we contribute. Junior college coaching demands immense effort, yet our compensation fails to align with the hours, commitment, and impact that we have. This disparity is unfair and honestly is very unsustainable. Without action, we risk losing passionate coaches who are vital to the success of our programs. Burnout, diminished morale, and turnover are inevitable if this trend continues. Fair pay isn't just about finances. It's about valuing our work and investing in Lane's future. Ensuring fair compensation reaffirms Lane's commitment to learning, diversity, and innovation. Showing that fairness and equity truly matter. Equal pay for equal work. That's all we're asking for, and it's what we deserve. I genuinely love working at Lane Community College, and I deeply believe in its mission. It's time for Lane to value the coaches who give their all to this college and its students. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jessica Alvarado. I'm reading a statement for Sibel Higgins, who could not be here tonight. She's teaching in ESL. I'm dedicated to students' success. This drives me today and has driven me from the beginning of my work at LCC starting over 28 years ago. I have helped thousands of ESL, international immigrant, and U.S. students, citizen students get ahead with workforce, community, and academic English on the road to reaching their goals. And I've helped LCC credit program be a more welcoming place for my students. I've worked on many special projects, curriculum development for my department and across departments, and efforts to improve instruction at LCC across the state. For 17 of these more than 28 years, I was part-time. I waited over a decade for a full-time position that I currently have to become available and was lucky to get it. During that decade, I was a single mother raising 2 boys the best way I could. With my master's in TESOL, I would have had to move to another city to get a decent paying job because there were no other options in Eugene. I didn't want to leave my Lane community, my students, my colleagues, and the Lane mission that I believe in so wholeheartedly. I didn't want to move to take my children away from their father, their grandmother, or their community. So I collected bottles on walks, got 2 more part-time jobs. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'd wake up in the morning and be an ESL teacher. Tuesday and Thursday, I'd wake up in the morning and be an elementary school Spanish and sometimes Chinese teacher. Saturday and Sunday, I'd wake up in the morning and be a medical interpreter at Sacred Heart Hospital, sometimes being called to the emergency room in the middle of the night. Every morning, I'd have to check myself to see what role I was playing that day, never able to give myself completely to one profession or the other. Little time for professional development in my chosen field, TESOL. I had constant financial anxiety with a new teaching assignment and contract every term. I could never relax and know that I was going to be okay. I couldn't predict and make future financial decisions based on my projected income. I couldn't take care of my home like it needed, and my retirement savings is now not what it could have been at my age. I feel like LCC was rolling me around in broken glass and gravel, using me for my skills and my passion for my students. The anxiety I felt for so many years became a part of my children's upbringing, trying to cultivate a feeling of safety and joy during their childhood while experiencing extreme financial anxiety. They knew the truth, even though I did my best to hide it, and it has affected the development of their personalities and how they see the world.
Good evening. I'm April Myler, standing in solidarity with my LCCEA colleagues, and I'm reading part 2. Now, 11 years into my full-time position, I still have PTSD from those 17 years. It's still slowly dripping out of me. I'm constantly amazed that I can buy a simple cup of coffee at a coffee shop if necessary, without planning and limiting the expense. I can visit my 85-year-old father, aunts, and cousins on the East Coast now. I can save for retirement and pay my property tax without skimping on groceries, but I don't have the reserves that I could have had at this point in my career. I have seen other single income head of household teachers, amazing and dedicated teachers like me, get eaten up by LCC like this and then go back to school to change professions or move to exit this unfair situation. LCC loses and our students lose. LCC suffers. LCC loses when part-timers outnumber full-timers. As a part-timer, I could not give 100% of my work self to Lane. I could not be on committees, attend department meetings, collaborate with other faculty, and be the glue that holds an educational institution together. Now, as a full-timer, I have seen how much time gets squandered trying to piece together every single initiative or project while taking into account the limitations we have due to a mostly part-time faculty. Moreover, we've wasted countless hours and days each year running hiring committees to fill this class or that, because part-time teachers have maxed out their hours for the academic year. Turnover is not good for students, not good for the department, and not good for morale. Also, the disparity between full-time and part-time income and job security creates a chasm between us that shouldn't be there. It creates disharmony and impedes continuous program and college improvement. It is disrespectful to our equally qualified part-time colleagues. We need fewer management positions. Think about the savings. One management salary translates into more than one full-time faculty position. More full-time positions and a much smaller percentage of part-time positions for those who do want to work part-time. LCC's part-time faculty situation has created less loyalty, lower morale and motivation, and a feeling of discombobulation because so few full-timers are doing much of the work of holding Lane together. But the attention we need to give to multiple issues on top of our teaching load creates impossible multitasking. The glue is not strong enough if we want to grow our college and nimbly respond to our county, community, and world's ever-changing educational needs. Thank you.
Wendy Simmons, followed by Marge Heltzer and Adrian Mitchell.
Good evening, Board of Education members. My name is Wendy Simmons, and I'm a faculty member in PE. As a union member, I'm very concerned to hear that the board is considering changes to Board Policy 275 that would allow interfund transfers from the Early Retirement Fund. Many years ago, the Board of Education deliberately set up the Early Retirement Fund as a separate fund with sequestered funding so that it would not be commingled with operational expenses or other funds within the budget. The fund essentially pays for itself with the original allocation that was made by the Board of Education and determined by actuarial formulas. In setting up the fund, the board had the foresight to understand that the college saves money when employees retire, either through non-replacement of the position or when hiring new employees who begin at a lower salary level. Please see the details that I handed out about employees covered by the post-retirement benefits as outlined in the FY23 official audit statement on page 63. This includes 45 retirees with 7 classified, 35 faculty, and 3 managers, not to mention the large number of active employees cited by the audit. These funds were bargained and are committed through the faculty contract. Eligible manager retirees also receive these benefits. These funds had previously been included in the classified contract as well. Please don't change Board Policy 275 to authorize borrowing from the Early Retirement Fund. It supports our retirees and employees who meet specific eligibility requirements, like myself, and who have dedicated years of service to this institution and community. This benefit definitely influenced my decision after working at Lane for 24 years to retire early and work part-time. Raiding the Early Retirement Fund would ultimately cost LCC money if early retirement is no longer a viable option for employees, not to mention legal issues that could arise from the retirees who rely upon the benefits when they made their decision to retire. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Marge Helzer, full-time anthropology instructor. I'm here tonight to talk about class size. There are many studies that point to the value of small class sizes at all levels of education. I won't cite them here, but instead point to 3 reasons to keep class sizes at Lane small. They include students, faculty, and recruitment. After 25 years of teaching, I can strongly attest to the value of small class sizes. I know what it's like to teach in large lecture halls. I've done it at Oregon and at Oregon State. I didn't know my students' names, and I was often limited with the types of assignments I could use to evaluate their work. It was definitely stressful. That type of experience can also feel alienating for both students and faculty. And that's because learning is a socially interactive process. Students in small classes tend to do better because they form relationships with their teachers and their classmates. They get more individualized attention. They feel recognized and important. They are more accountable and more engaged. And all of this leads to better educational outcomes and higher retention rates. When this happens, when we get to know our students and we see them gain confidence, maybe overcome a challenge, grapple with difficult concepts, and eventually succeed, that is what makes the work we do as teachers rewarding. This is why we are here at Lane Community College, because we want to teach, we want to engage our students at the intro level in small classes. We want to make a difference in their lives. If class sizes were to increase for in-person or online classes, our ability to maintain the interpersonal relationships we work so hard to preserve would break down. The quality of education would suffer, faculty would feel burnout, and I fear many would leave the college. None of this would help with recruitment. Remember that some of the highest ranking and most selective colleges and universities in this country recruit students by highlighting their low student-faculty ratios. On the homepage of our LCC website, we are recruiting students who are looking for, and I quote, an education and job training that won't break the bank or a campus that feels more like a community. My request tonight is that we all recognize and work to preserve the community in Lane Community College by keeping class sizes small. Thank you.
Adrian Mitchell, followed by Peggy Oberstaller, Rachel Aldredge, and Eric Kim.
Good evening, members of the board. Peggy and I are speaking as union leaders and in solidarity with our colleagues. We encourage you to review the LCCEA memo from last month with links to actual documents that outline the history of issues impacting faculty in ABSC and ESL. Last month, you also heard from 7 faculty members reading quotes and statements from well over 24 faculty affected in ABSC and ESL. For instance, Sarah Pastos shared her experience as a faculty member whose identity is native from the Flathead Nation, stating, "I am professionally insulted and feel unsafe here. Lane Community College can do better. Please show us that you care about us and value the important work we do every day." Another faculty member reported, "We lost trust that the administration would take our professional backgrounds and experience into account when assigning courses in the future. We lost trust that our jobs will be secure in the future." Alicia Niles concluded, "We are standing together in solidarity to address the erroneous claims. Having personally seen the anguish and toll this has taken on my colleagues, I also ask for President Bulger's personal commitment to begin healing the damage caused by this harm and rebuilding trust and a sense of safety for faculty." In all, there were more than 24 faculty voices included in the statement. What did the administration do in response? First, they sent emails to faculty to provide assurance that they will be certified for some of the courses, but still have provided no assurance that the faculty will be certified for all the courses in their departments, despite decades of documentation of the faculty members' qualifications. This is precisely the problem that faculty have been facing for 7 months now. What else did the administration do? Their attorneys issued subpoenas to all the full-time faculty. One member even received the subpoena while working at the downtown center. Numerous faculty wondered if this was retaliation or intimidation for speaking at the board meeting last month. Some expressed feeling singled out or targeted by the administration.
The administration's attorneys did so knowing that every single full-time faculty member working in ABSE had already declined to serve as a witness for the administration and already have been actively working with faculty attorneys to uphold their rights. And what else did the administration do? Last night, the responses to information requests were posted to board docs, laden with more erroneous and misleading information about our amazing, most highly qualified faculty in ABSC and ESL. One faculty member read the responses and stated, "I might classify this as historical fiction at best. It reads as historical fiction, but it's gaslighting at the core. It feels like a big cover-up." This leaves us all wondering, why is the administration spending so much time defending their actions rather than solving the problem they created unnecessarily? Can't LCC do better? Is taking action that intimidates faculty really appropriate for LCC's administration to do? Has the administration forgotten that our union members are also their employees? Is it an oversight that management does not seem to remember that faculty are the teachers who serve our students and our community day after day, and in the case of ABSC and ESL, also night after night, in the classrooms at all LCC campuses and community locations throughout the college service district? How much is LCC spending on these attorney's fees? How does any of this support faculty morale
and improving campus climate? And when will the Board of Education members who represent the people of Lane County take action? Our faculty, our students, and our community deserve better. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rachel Aldridge, and I am a striking Teamster at Bigfoot Beverages. I'm here to ask for Lane Community College to apply more pressure to Bigfoot Beverages by canceling their contract and sending a letter to ask them to come back to the negotiation table with us. We've been out there for 77 days in all of the elements, around the clock, at all of our locations, fighting to keep our pensions. But as others have said, this is no longer just about our pensions. This is just fighting with greedy owners who want to bust our union. The company continues to hire temporary employees and threaten us with permanent replacement, while the vast majority of their seasoned, skilled workers are standing out there on those picket lines, waiting for them to do the right thing. As mentioned before, last week, Bigfoot Beverages sent out a memo saying that they no longer recognize our union. It's as if we've all just been discarded. They would rather fly in temporary workers from the East Coast, pay for temporary housing, and pay them almost double our wages than let us keep our pension. A lot of folks you see standing out there have worked for other non-union beverage companies in the area. Those of us that have know what it was like to get taken advantage of by greedy corporations without the protection and support of a union. We cannot let them get away with this. I know I've seen a lot of your faces out there on the picket lines or passing by or dropping off pizza or coffee for us, and I just want to let you know that we are very grateful for all of the support from our local community and all of the amazing community organizations that have been coming out. But it would mean so much for us to also get the support of LCC in adding that pressure to Bigfoot Beverages by canceling the contract or pressuring them to get back to the negotiation table. Thank you.
Good evening, Lane Community College Board of Education, Dr. Bulger, SGA President Gibson. My name's Eric Kim. I teach psychology in the social science division. I'm here to talk about how learning psychology and the social sciences help students in their personal life or potential career. As a community, we value helping one another. There's a tapestry of knowledge in the social sciences that can help us improve helping behavior and reduce barriers to helping. Researchers Latney and Darley identified variables that influence helping a stranger. Looking at the top of your handout or doing a web search on Eric Kim and Lane, you'll find the handout on the third hit. Seminary students were told two things: a topic of a lecture they were to give and how much time before they had to give the lecture. The topic of the lecture was how to get a job as a seminary student or the Good Samaritan parable. This is the top row versus the bottom row on your handout. They were told they either had 5 minutes or 30 minutes to cross campus to give the lecture. This is the left column versus the right column on your handout. Along the way, there was a stranger, head down and coughing in the alleyway. How do these two variables influence helping? Thinking about how to get a job, the top row, compared to thinking about the Good Samaritan parable, the bottom row, had no effect on helping behavior. However, having 30 minutes to give the speech instead of 5 minutes increased the frequency of helping a stranger in need, and that's the right-hand column. At the bottom of your handout, in order to provide help, 3 steps are involved. You need to notice the event, interpret the event as an emergency, and assume responsibility. Focusing attention on giving the lecture in 5 minutes made it difficult to notice a person the person requiring help. So what does this mean? As a culture, we tend to explain behavior with personality and downplay situational factors. When we feel anxious or hungry, when our mind is full, distracted with due dates, working 2 jobs, and even multitasking, a person is less likely to notice an emergency or less likely to interpret the event as an emergency. Either way, they fail to help. We need to create a social environment that facilitates helping others. This is relevant in sociology, politics, and economics. We need to encourage visits to the Zen Den, promote the food pantry, have downtime to observe the world around us, improve time management, encourage employers to provide a living wage, and recognize the limitations of attention. A world where more people help strangers benefits us all. Thank you for your time.
There's no more names.
Thank you to everyone that provided testimony. That is the conclusion of the public comment. We will be moving to the president's report. Apologies, Austin, go ahead.
No worries, no worries. Board Chair, I was just wondering, there was obviously some great handouts. Thank you to the speakers who provided those handouts. Is it possible for those to be scanned and emailed and or attached to board docs so that Denise and I will be able to see them?
I believe we can get that figured out after the meeting, if that's acceptable.
Okay.
Thank you. President Bolger, would you please provide the president's report?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Good evening, everyone. I begin my report this evening with gratitude to the Board of Education for your unwavering commitment to Lane Community College's mission and purpose. Your leadership, your advocacy also play a vital role in Lane's ability to empower students, strengthen community connections, and fulfill our values of access, student success, and excellence in education. Tonight's focus on the biannual budget update highlights one of the board's most critical governance responsibilities. This update provides a clear view of our financial position, ensuring we remain transparent and aligned with our strategic priorities. Tonight's budget update will also offer insights into year-to-date performance and identify key areas of focus for the second half of the fiscal year. These updates are essential to ensuring our financial strategies and budget management remain nimble and responsive to both institutional priorities and external challenges. Now, Lane continues to see a positive enrollment trend, with early winter term projections indicating gains across key measures, including headcount, full-time equivalent, and duplicated enrollment. While we are not yet back to pre-pandemic enrollment levels, these sustained increases affirm the impact of our outreach, innovative program offerings, and the community's trust in Lane's relevance and value. This momentum is a direct reflection of the dedication of our faculty, classified professionals, and managers who consistently foster an environment where students thrive and innovation is embraced. And it also demonstrates the power of Lane's commitment to serving as a bridge to life opportunities for the communities we serve. Our institutional climate, rooted in collaboration and shared purpose, was evident in recent events. The LCC Foundation's celebration event in November raised $376,607, the second largest in its history, to support student scholarships and success initiatives. This event highlighted Lane's vision of being the workforce and talent development hub of Lane County and beyond, with the Hire Local, Hire Lane message featured prominently. At the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce Economic Summit, Lane's role as a partner in regional economic growth was front and center. Our panel emphasized work-based learning opportunities, including cooperative education and internships, and extended an invitation to employers to collaborate with Lane in preparing talented people for their chosen careers. These efforts reflect our commitment to fostering an institutional climate where an attention toward partnership flourishes. Lane's impact resonates far beyond our campus into the community. I look forward to building on this momentum in the year to come. Thank you for your continued support and engagement. I wish each of you a joyful holiday season and a bright start to 2025. And that's my report.
Thank you. We will be heading to the Student Government Association report. Sophie, will you please provide the report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, my fellow board members. So I just wanted to start this off by saying we've been very busy this year, this term, the Student Government Association. So I wanted to say a special thank you to my team members as they've worked very hard to make all the things we've been doing happening. Chad Larson, Alicia Mendez, Emma Duncan, Smangaliso Ndlalose, Aman Nurmu Hanbatov, Kuli Sociala, Zara Mamadli, Gate Qualeso, and Jordan Myers. We've done a lot of things this term. We have done the Harvest Feast. We partnered with the Titan Pantry. I think I mentioned that last meeting. Peppermints and Presidents, where that was today. Dr. Bulger came and we chatted with some students and provided coffee and snacks during this difficult time of the term. And then we have a couple of upcoming events. We have an event surrounded around like safe partying and being like safe when it comes to going out and going to bars and whatnot. And then we also have Welcome Week next term coming up called Get Cheesy in the Courtyard, where we'll provide food to students coming in and other resources to get them started for the rest of the term. And then not only that, I wanted to highlight some of the speakers that we've had come to our work sessions to work with us. We've had President Bulger there to talk about the upcoming President's Leadership Circle, which is going to be very innovative and exciting. And then we had Kevin Steves come from the AI Task Force to ask for student input on artificial intelligence and how it's being used at our college here. We had Al from the Veterans Center come and let us know about some of the events that they're going to have. Daniel from Title IX, who's going to be helping coordinate our Sex and Drugs and Safety event. Then we've also had Don Whiting come to speak to us about our instructional modalities here at LCC and how it looks from a student perspective when we see hybrid versus online classes when it comes to registering. And so we also, I've been meeting with Brett Roulette when it comes to getting engaged in student advocacy in our legislation. So that's really exciting, and we've got some things planned to try to go to the Capitol and advocate for things that are important for students and are going to affect our lives directly. And not only that, but we did have a senator, one of our senators, Gate, attend a Youth Ocean Summit at U of O that was advocating for more sustainable practices, especially when it comes to plastic use. So yeah, I'm really excited for what we have planned, and I hope some of you guys can come to the events when we have dates. So thank you. That's my report.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. So moving to the adoption of the consent agenda. Are there any changes to be made to the consent agenda? Denise?
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes.
Please pull Board Policy 275 and 280.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have a motion to move the consent agenda without BP 275 and 280.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Okay, and vote by acclamation. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed, nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. So Denise, would you like to speak to the items that you pulled?
Thank you. As we got some background history on previous Board of Education establishing, in particular, Policy 275, because we never can predict future circumstances, it has never seemed a wise idea in all the institutions I've been in to borrow to have loan arrangements from a retirement account. I don't see the validity of doing so at this point in time. I've not heard any reasoning why this would be introduced at this point in time. I think it's our fiduciary responsibility to protect what has already been in this fund and not to have any fund transfers in it.
I have Austin and then I have Steve.
Oh, I just didn't know. It sounded like a question. I just wanted to make sure if there was a response.
I'm sorry, could you maybe, Trustee Diamond, clarify the question? Thank you.
Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Denise. Denise, you're muted.
Sorry. It's not really a question. I really don't see any reason why it's being introduced at this point in time when historically this has been a, for lack of a better word, protected fund.
All right, cool. Thank you. First question I have, I have multiple, quite frankly, but I will just kind of go off of my information request responses here to kind of start off with, which one of them was in regards to the employee retiree benefit funds. If they could describe a little bit of the history around this fund. From my understanding is that this is a standalone. This was created by the board. And yeah, any history and additional background would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
I can try to speak to that. I can only speak to it in context, but any new establishment of a fund would have to be approved by the board. So I don't know when it was approved by the board, but it would have been in its origination. To speak to BP 275, this is an existing board policy that has a revision that actually redlines the Employee Retirement Benefit Fund specifically and does allow for other funds. But let me provide some general context. One, there are no existing interfund loans that the college has among each of its funds. So in accounting terms, in my past roles, one of my jobs was I ran school finance for the state of Montana. One of my jobs was to advise 250 school districts across the state. So I'm going to give you examples because one of the questions you had, but I wasn't sure exactly what context. This is a pretty standard policy that governmental agencies, especially educational agencies, have as a flexibility because it would be in violation of accounting standards to end a fund in a negative balance. So what I've seen in the past, let's say one instance was there was a school that had, for whatever reason, had a negative general fund balance. The only way you fix an ending fund balance that's potentially negative is to do interfund loans. There's two requirements with it. One, it doesn't change the original intention of the loaning fund. So let's pretend in this case they took from a retirement fund, which is highly protected funds, right? They are. When it doesn't change what those early retirement funds are intended to be used for, they are held for that. The second condition is it's paid back in the very next year. So in these particular cases that I saw, which was very few and far between, it was a situation where something happened and they couldn't prevent and fix it. Like they had 2 weeks left. They couldn't fix it. So what you do is you put something on the books that's an interfund loan. You say, hey, my general fund is $200,000 negative, but I do have debt service fund is one that is not included because it's very protected. But if you had a retirement fund, you could do a $200,000 fund loan just to get through the year so you don't end the year in violation of accounting standards. The very next year, you have to plan to pay that $200,000 back. So this is an existing policy that I see very standardly across the board. It doesn't change any contractual requirements that the college would have. It doesn't violate any requirements that you would have contractually to staff or to any staff that already have agreements. It doesn't dismiss any of those obligations. It doesn't eat up those funds. It requires a payback period the next time. But all it does is provide a flexibility for emergent situations that may come up that you can't necessarily predict until they happen, right? So this is already an existing policy. There was one word that we're suggesting change just for potential use in the future, but it's not one that I anticipate the college using or enacting. And then on the flip side, if there was ever a situation where there was a need for an interfund loan, it would come to the board for approval. And then again, the next year you have to pay that fund back. It's a requirement, but this is just an allowance to not violate government accounting standards and have an audit recommendation. That would be, it's not a good thing to end with a negative fund balance. You don't want to do that. It's just detrimental. And if you were to end that in your general fund, it could have bonding requirements in the year. It affects your bond rating. It affects all sorts of things. So there's a cause and effect here. And all this is an accounting policy that allows you to manage funds if you needed to do that. So you can rescind the entire policy, but you do in future years have the potential of having this come up and have a need for it and not have that flexibility. But it is an existing board policy.
Understood. I could stop for my second question if someone else has a question.
I've got Steve and Julie in the queue. So if you don't have a follow-up, then we'll go to them and
So,
then.
yeah, I have other questions, but I'll go after them.
Well, thank you. I think you mostly kind of clarified the things I was going to underscore, Kara, but my understanding and I'm just reviewing them now, I wasn't preparing for this. I didn't think this was controversial based on the read that we did a few weeks ago, but this establishes a process. This doesn't, we're not at this point in time contemplating any particular loan from one fund or another. It's just if we were to do a thing, this is the process by which that would be governed.
Exactly.
I need clarity. So I thought this was just language revision on these particular policies. And so we have a red line on the proposed changes. And the red line is removing the may not employee retirement benefits from a line that includes debt service, financial aid fund, and other. It's adding does it add other? Yes, it adds other and makes it green. So you're kind of highlighting it, right? So I have the same kind of question and concern as like, why pull the employee retirement benefit funds, add in an other, kind of implies that now employee and retirement funds are in the other category. But why not pull it from the debt service fund or from the financial aid fund if we're just wanting to make it? But is this just a language change? Because everything else is the same in this policy.
Yeah, it's not a good question. And it's not intended to, it's intended for any other, if we were to have, let's say we add another fund or there's another fund that does have a restricted purpose, we don't want to have interfund loans from any restricted purposes. So it's included in there, but it was just, it's to give that, it's to open up the language. So if there are other restricted funds, people in the future wouldn't try to pull from those either, if that makes sense. It's not a word we're attached to either. It was a recommendation to try and make the flexibility easier. So if there's other funds we don't want included, you wouldn't want, it would open that up to that policy.
So the next sentence where it says loans from the early retirement plan may only be, would be the caveat catch-all for that, for the restricted funds of retirement funds. I'm trying to figure out how to just, address any concerns.
Yeah. Say that question again.
Go ahead. I think you heard me.
Well, the differential is if you are borrowing from that fund, it can only be used for specific purposes, and that's because it outlines under the bullet points, if you're using an interfund loan to pay for real estate, you have a longer period of time to pay it back.
Nice.
And so what this is saying is if you use a retirement fund for a loan, you do not have 5 years to pay it back. You must do it within the next year.
Nice.
And there was the question about an example of when we might need to do something like this. And 1.5 years ago, you were presented as a board with a possible situation of needing to take out a loan to cover payroll because the state of Oregon, every 2 years, delays the 8th quarter payment to community colleges until the first quarter of the next biennium, the next budget cycle. And so the board was faced with having to go out to take a loan from a bank and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest to the bank to get through that short-term loan, when this would give you the option, not require that you take money from a retirement account, but it would give the board another option to where you could consider doing an internal loan here instead of taking a loan from a bank and paying interest externally.
Thank you.
I'm going to follow up on that, and then I'll go back to Denise and Austin for a second round. So as we go into this final quarter in about 6 months of this fiscal year, that 2-year cycle, so I guess it would be spring of 2026. We're expecting to not receive a payment that quarter, but we would get an additional payment the following quarter.
April to June of 2025.
I'm sorry, April to June of 2025. We will not get our state allocation until the following.
The next budget year begins July. I think the payment comes in August.
And can you explain why that is and if there are any opportunities to change that at the state level?
So in 2003, where the state had a deficit and was meeting in multiple special sessions to try to figure out how to cut enough from the budget to balance it. And the creative solution it came up with was to delay payments to education districts, to K-12, to universities, to community colleges, and not have to make that 8th quarter payment. So they balanced the budget and they said, we're just going to pay it in the next budget year. And it worked real well in 2004, 2005. Fast forward to today, it's become a much bigger payment, right? And many colleges over the 20 years have been forced to take out loans every 2 years to cover the state's payment. And you can, you add, if it would have been a couple $100,000 just for us for last year, when we didn't have an ending fund balance to cover the amount, we oftentimes would have to go for external loans. There are, many community colleges do this. There's already conversations amongst the colleges for having to take out a loan for the 8th quarter payment coming up here in 2025. And so colleges that do not have internal resources to pull from are already making plans to have to take external loans to get through that period.
And has OCCA been advocating for a change to this policy?
Yes, the challenge is it's about $110 million issue now because they've let it go for 20 years. For the legislature to fix it, it would cost about $110 million. And put yourself in the shoes of a politician in Salem. There's not a lot of credit they can go back to the voters in their district to say, hey, I just spent $110 million and what did you get? Well, I fixed an accounting issue. And so when we are competing against K-12 schools and human services, and the state just never has enough money, it's tough to get them to fix an accounting issue when they look at, it's worked for 20 years, let's just keep going this way. We have had conversations, we meaning OCCA, with leadership, and there was no appetite to take this up in the next session. It is an issue that the legislative committee, I know Trustee Fulnagi is on the legislative committee at OCCA. I serve on that. We've talked about it. We've reached out to leadership to see if it would be an issue that had any traction, and it just doesn't in the current climate. But it's not an issue that we're ignoring because it is just going to get tougher and tougher for the state to resolve the further they kick the can.
Just to say, hoping we can bark up that tree a little bit. And, I share similar concerns to some of my other colleagues around, getting into we already have some interfund loans we're struggling to pay back. So the idea of having one from this account would be, stresses me out a little bit. I think I'd like to just know a little bit more about, is this paid out in a lump sum when someone decides to retire early, or is it paid out monthly? Like, what is the cash flow in and out of this account?
And I'll defer that to Kara. But I don't believe we have issues with current loans. I think we have funds that have deficits, which is different than interfund loans I don't believe we have any loans that have any payment issues. But what you're referring to are some of the funds that have deficits, and that's a different issue.
Okay. I've got Denise and then Austin and then Steve for a second round.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
So this immediate discussion has already given lots of examples of trying to fix things, right? So basically, I heard the rationale that when you're trying to fix a general fund balance and you start looking around for other funds to borrow from, the fact that anything says that it has to be paid back in 1 year doesn't alleviate my concerns one little bit, because we've just heard a whole series of changes and manipulations of one kind or another when things get tough. I do not believe it is in our best interest, nor is it wise to start any kind of process that allows for this loan, quote unquote, from this retirement fund. Anything can happen, and we've already been in those experiences where it does. And we don't need to go down. I understand that we don't have any loans that have an issue and we have funds that are in deficit, we're going to have to deal with that. But this is not the way to do it.
Steve, if you want to ask your question, you can.
Thanks. I'll wait for you.
Okay, perfect. Now I wanted to ask if there was a strict timeline that we have to pass this update to the board policy. Like, is this an immediate action that we need to take now, or can we wait another month?
This is up for routine review, Austin. Your board policies states that you should review policies once every 5 years. This one has not been reviewed since 2017, so it's beyond that that board policy mandate. Other than that, it's up to you if you would like to give it another few readings.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
So a couple more questions. I think for you, Kara, given the example that Brett provided that we might need a short-term loan at the end of each 2-year biennium, right? And that this is a potential source, and it's also got a very short-term payback, right? Sort of dedicated source of funding that's going to come to us just some 3 months later. So so I get why we would want to do it to save some interest money. Why are we identifying this as a potential fund? Is it our only option, or do you see other funds from which we could pull a loan?
To answer that, I'm not identifying any funds as loans to cover that particular situation. That is a valid situation that can cause it. They're twofold issue. They're two different issues. So what the college has done in the past is gotten a TANS loan, which is a short-term borrowing program loan. I think it was 2 years from now. So at 23, the college received a $5 million loan from the state and then paid it back in the next year. That is completely separate because that's a cash flow issue. This is an on the books issue of a fund being negative. So when you do interfund loans within your own programs, you're saying we have enough cash, we didn't have enough revenue, and we overspent a particular fund for whatever reason that might be. So you borrow temporarily to fix your books. The short-term borrowing program is a cash flow problem. We don't have the cash to pay the bills, but on the books we have plenty of revenue and expenses, right? They balance out. They're kind of two different issues, but it is a similar concept, like Brett's saying. So I'm not suggesting we make any interfund loans or that we have any on the future, even to fix any of the deficits. The deficits we have to figure out in a different fashion. It has to be a long-term strategy. So it's nothing I would fix with interfund loans. Interfund loans is not a fix for deficits. Yeah. It's just a short-term accounting issue is how I would context that.
But I'll just say before I finish my time that I think I get the issue. I get the sensitivity, of the issue. For my own part, I think I prefer some additional flexibility that this provides, knowing that, if the situation ever arose and staff presented us with an option to take a loan from whatever fund it might be, it wouldn't necessarily be the retirement fund, but it could be with a whole repayment schedule within a year and all of that. This board would take that thing very seriously. There would probably be all kinds of public testimony, right? We'd have a lot to contemplate before making that decision very carefully. So I have confidence, right, that the process would help us be absolutely certain that if we were to do such a thing, that we were 100% confident of a short-term repayment schedule. And at the same time, if it was my retirement fund, I would also, be a little bit worried and concerned and sensitive, right? If anybody was playing with, my potential retirement funds. I think I get the thing, and hopefully we all do all the way around. I guess where I land, sort of given the process and my confidence in the folks on this board and the process that we undergo before taking a decision, that additional flexibility is a good thing for us. And I understand the hesitation in this particular case.
Go ahead, Austin.
One reason why I would like to wait an additional month before moving this forward, pretty much my suggestion is to actually table these two areas because I know there's legislation days coming up and there's going to be some legislation around state pools, which actually it can be a really fascinating financial instrument for us to use at a community college level, but also our K through 12 partners. But so I'm kind of curious about how that plays out with legislative days, and because that might be a different avenue than taking these changes essentially. So I'm personally in favor of tabling this and for opportunities for additional questions, additional conversations, and I would also like to see what other financial options are potential in this upcoming legislative session.
Just to for legislative days provide an opportunity for committees in the legislature, which, keep in mind, the legislature will change on January 1st. So the legislative days in December are the outgoing legislature that will be meeting to talk about bill concepts for the upcoming legislative session. Those concepts may or may not get introduced when the session starts, and they definitely won't be acted on before you meet in January, likely February, March. Those bills will have to go through the process and go through hearings on both sides of the building and get, you know, positive votes in the House and Senate and from the governor in order to be enacted. So if the goal is to table it, I just want you not to feel like you're going to have a lot of information from Salem within 1 month. But you know, you can have the same conversation even if you approve this policy, because you're not approving alone. You're giving yourself one additional option down the road if a proposal is brought to you. And we would have the same kind of debate you're having now. It's just you would have this option. And as far as the other board policy, I wasn't sure if you wanted to handle that separately, but the only change to board policy 280, which is your current board policy for interfund transfers, we added an additional reference to a state statute, but there's no other change to the text of that board policy. So I'm just curious if there are any questions other than why we're adding that statute. You know, the rest of the text is your current board policy.
So it seems like we have three options here. We can either delay a month, we can approve the policy as written, or we could adjust the current policy to undo the red line through transfers from retirement accounts. My personal preference would be that we would actually table for a month. That would give Austin and probably myself as well time to ask some additional questions through the question and response process for a vote in January. But I leave it to the board for someone to make a motion for one of those three things.
I'll move that we table it.
I second.
Okay.
Table what?
So that.
BP 275.
Okay, and that was seconded. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. All in favor of tabling for 1 month?
Aye.
Can you roll call? Say.
Kevin Alltucker,
Aye.
Denise Diamond,
Aye.
Austin Volnaghi,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Zach Mulholland,
Aye.
Julie Weisman.
Aye.
Okay, and then regarding board policy 280, are we ready?
Make a motion.
Are we ready to move forward with that now, or do we need to table that as well?
I move that we approve BP 280 tonight.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, so can you do roll call again, please?
Kevin Alltucker,
Aye.
Denise Diamond,
Aye.
Austin Volnaghi,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Zach Mulholland,
Aye.
Julie Weisman.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. So with that, we are done with the consent agenda items, and we will be moving on to action items. The first action item is the acquisition of printer and copier services. Dr. Bulger, will you please present this action item?
Yes, and I'm going to ask Fred, I think you're in the room, to speak to this. Oh, there we are. Fred Rankin, in place of Brent Munoz, who I don't think is online.
Fred's gonna do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I wasn't aware. Thank you so much. for that. And so we'll have Brett
Yeah.
Roulette
Fine,
present
Fred
this
would like to
item.
come up too. We were
Thanks a lot.
part of the RFP team that took on the review of the proposal here. What we bring before you this evening is a project that has been a priority of mine for about 4 years, ever since I became the manager over the printing and graphics department. We did a census of all of the print devices on the main campus a couple of years ago. We have 364 dedicated print devices on the main campus, 306 desktop printers and multifunction devices, 58 copiers. Of those, 105 different models, 6 different brands, an average age of 14 years. If that doesn't sound crazy enough, when you talk to the IT department, now just imagine a computer that is about 15 years old has some cyber risk issues. Those same issues exist in a printer that's connected to a network, a copy machine that's connected to a network. We have printers on this campus connected to our network that are 25 years old. They work just fine. They would be great at home. They are a cybersecurity risk on our campus. So for me, this has been a priority issue to take on. On top of that, we have 3 primary vendors that we use currently on campus for servicing all of our devices. Our goal was to get down to 1. The previous manager, the last time we did a contract for these services was about 7 years ago. And the thought was you wanted multiple vendors because it keeps them all honest. Maybe in the private sector, but in the public world, we have state contracts. We know everyone's prices. There's not really a pricing war between them. And so our goal was to come to pretty much get down to as few machines as possible, 1 or 2 brands, 1 vendor, try to become as efficient as possible, and also reduce the number of machines on campus. And get rid of these 15-year-old machines and replace them with newer machines that are not a cybersecurity risk, because I want my friends in IT like Fred to sleep at night. And so we went out for an RFP. We received good bids from 5 companies. We have relationships with many of them. The vendor we chose is Kelly Connect. I think they're Kelly Create now. They've changed their name a couple times in the past few years, but we've had a long relationship with Kelly. They're one of our main vendors on campus currently. They have a great team of service folks in the area that are able to provide usually service within hours of when we need it. And we weren't getting that service from some of our other current vendors, just to be honest. So what we bring before you tonight is a contract. Annually, the prices don't exceed the amount that would need board approval, but because it's a 5-year contract, the amount as it adds up will exceed the $200,000. And a lot of it is expenses we're currently paying. For example, the service contracts, those prices are going to remain the same. What you see in kind of the 5-year plan that we came up with is how much it's going to cost to phase out the old machines, the security risks on campus, and replace them with new machines. And so that's what we bring before you tonight. I can answer any questions if you have them.
Yeah, I got Austin and then Julie. And then Sophie.
For the purposes of discussion and questions, I move that in accordance with ORS 279B.075, that we approve the recommendation of Kelly Create Co. be awarded the contract for printer and copier services at Lane Community College over a 5-year term.
Got a second from Julie, and then discussion.
Just a question, or 2 questions. One, how does this impact the print shop that's on campus here? Is there any impact?
There's no impact to the print shop. The print shop has separate contracts with Kelly. They're our main vendor over there. So this is primarily for all the copiers and printers throughout campus and in our other locations, printers in offices, copy machines, those types of devices, as well as the machines that are used by students in the computer labs and throughout campus.
Excellent. Second question. Will this make it easier for our IT staff, especially our student IT staff?
Yes.
Fantastic.
I could end right there, but it is going to make billing easier. We are trying to make things more efficient from all angles, from the work that is done through IT staff. Part of the discussions we have had with Kelly have been pretty detailed about how this would be implemented. They will provide a lot of the work to help switch out all of the machines on campus, to work with IT staff to identify which departments we want to focus on in year 1, year 2, and onward. At the end of the day, we should see. Well, I know that Kathy, who does the billing in IT, should probably end up being one of the happiest folks on campus, because the software that's used to keep track of the clicks on the machines, how many copies and prints are done, that will, in theory, work much better when we don't have a ton of different brands and a ton of different machines all out there at the same time. It'll be easier to push out driver updates to make sure that they're up to date and secure and everything like that.
Can I hear from Frank too?
Fred?
Oh, Brett. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, this will address a lot of different problems. I mean, like Brett mentioned about cybersecurity, there was quite an influx in the last several years of printers being endpoint actions for bad actors to get into networks. And putting in higher end printers or newer printers will help with cybersecurity and allow us to be able to manage the machines a lot better, be able to increase printing speed, because we have machines that are trying to send data to printers and they're waiting 5 minutes before they're able to print them out, and which affects, of course, student learning, student printing for classes. So this will definitely help.
Perfect. Thank you.
Got Julie, and then Sophie, and then Denise.
My question was about you were talking about cybersecurity. And so what is the priority? You know, I see that you're going to be phasing out equipment, and I've worked with companies where we've had to do that, but I'm like, what's
Do you want us in a public meeting to let you know all the departments that have vulnerable machines?
No, I guess not. But that's how you're moving forward, right?
We're giving thought to well, I mean, and IT's been part of this, but I mean, we're focusing on the departments that we feel should be addressed first, those that might have the most, think about, you can think about the departments that
Biggest impacts.
Sophie?
Thank you. So, if this is correct, did I hear you mention something about removing some of the printers stations as well?
our goal is to replace machines.
Just
Now,
replace them and not.
in the long-term plan, we have a lot of printers in offices. For example, my office, I could probably live without an office printer. I can, very happily walk over to the copy machine in our department and grab my prints off that. And so there are areas where we can downsize the number of machines we have throughout campus. And in the long run, that will save us not just on the machine costs, but on service contracts and things like that.
Okay, so then I just urge you guys to think about the printing stations that students use. It is really important for a lot of students to have access to those, so it might be worth looking into those.
If anything, the student print stations will have newer machines and print quicker and work with handheld devices.
Yes, my ask is just don't get rid of them.
No, don't worry.
Good, thank you.
Denise, you're up next.
Do we lease any machinery? Any of these printers? Do we have any kind of leasing agreements anywhere?
So we currently do not. And that is part of the reason we're in the issue we're in. We have not budgeted to replace equipment for at least 7 years now, well before I took over printing and graphics. And so because of that, everything we have is owned and college owned. And so you could view that as being a good thing, but when you realize it's a 20-year-old college-owned printer, it's a vulnerability as far as cybersecurity goes. And so all of the new equipment comes with an option to own it. We'll be making the lease payments, and we have the option to purchase them, but we want to make sure we don't get into the same cycle that we're in now, where in 7 years, maybe someone else will be standing here begging the board to replace these outdated machines on campus. And so our goal would be at the end of the 5-year cycle to look at maybe which machines need to be replaced again and make sure that we always have, at least in the more vulnerable departments on campus, new secure equipment.
So do I understand correctly then that this is a leasing agreement with the option to purchase, but you're going down the road of leasing so that they take care of many things?
Correct. And that's really the only thing that changes. The service contract will remain the same as it is now. All of the machines that we currently own, we have a service contract with vendors to come in and take care of them.
Any more questions, Denise? Okay, Steve?
Yep, I'm supportive. We did a similar thing at the University of Oregon a handful of years ago, and at least I from everybody I've heard from, talked to, et cetera, it turned out to be a very good thing. You basically already answered my question. Why does this sort of increase by 30,000 a year? I guess I understand that now. Does that, so two questions. One, does that suggest that in year 6, right? You know, I know this is a 5-year contract, but at the end of that period of time, we would have to, you know, do something new, extend, renew, find a new, you know, bidder, that we should expect, you know, something like on the order of $150,000 a year sort of to manage this program there on out?
Correct. That should be right now what we're budgeting for this. And we basically cut all of this out of the budget about 7 years ago. And so the responsible thing to do would be to, in 5 years, to always have about $150,000 budget so that we can replace things. Now, we may make the decision in year 6 that some equipment's just fine. We don't have to replace everything on a 5-year basis. But, our goal is, while we're replacing everything, we're also identifying things that maybe don't need to be replaced the next time. Maybe they need to be eliminated. Maybe like I mentioned with my office printer, we just don't need that.
Seriously,
and so that
you don't need that printer.
I don't. I really don't. That's why I use myself as an example every time. But, that's how we could bring that $150,000 amount down a little bit.
Yeah. And my second question is, so you said you did a survey, I forget the numbers you told us, but hundreds of, desktop and et cetera, printers all over the place. I get that it would be really, really difficult to estimate the total cost of owning and managing all of that. It's super dispersed across, a very large, complicated budget. But can you give us some sense of whether this is ultimately a money saver, or is this an increase in cost, but there are benefits that come with it?
Just to give you one example, right now we have about 110 different types of toner that we have to stock and have available for machines on campus. I'd like to get that number down under 10. That alone creates efficiencies and some savings in itself. And so, that's kind of one of the ways that by getting control of the number of brands and the types of models that we have, we can really start to control some of the costs.
Mm-hmm.
I think I had probably obviously going to be repeating what Steve's partially said. So we don't know what we're currently spending on printers total.
We're currently not paying anything on printers and copiers to purchase the equipment. We are paying for service contracts. That amount's not going to change. That will stay the same.
So we're currently spending about $30,000 a year on contracts, $150,000 a year on contracts?
No, I don't have the. Was it about 80? I thought it was a little more than that.
This is leases.
I think it's on my computer if you want me to dig it up, but
if we can get
it's approximately $100,000 a year that we're paying on service contracts.
Okay. And so as this one phases in, those will phase out.
Service will remain the same, because even on the new equipment, you need the service contracts include paper, toner, and if something breaks, a person comes to campus and fixes it. And so on every piece of equipment, we have a service contract. That will stay the same. What we're paying this year, we will pay that next year. The $30,000 that is additional in this next year, and then 60, that's paying for the new equipment. So new printers and new copiers.
Okay, so the paper and servicing of the equipment stays the same.
We're paying that right now.
We're already paying about 100, and this is going to add 30, then 60, then 90, then okay.
Yeah.
And then are we expecting it to plateau at around 150K, and that would be the ongoing, or are we expecting to keep growing past that point?
There will be some inflation, of course, with these costs as we get 5 years out from today. However, our hope is that by decreasing the number of machines on campus, that $150,000 amount in year 5 will stay either the same amount or be able to reduce that a little bit in year 6 and 7. We had originally hoped to be able to replace all the equipment on campus in 3 years. It was just a little bit more expensive than we thought the budget could handle. And so we thought we could focus in the first 3 years on the oldest equipment on campus, those that really need to be replaced in our security vulnerabilities, and stretch it out over 5 years.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, with that, the motion is on the table. Let's do a roll call vote.
Kevin Alltucker,
Aye.
Denise Diamond,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Zach Mulholland,
Aye.
Julie Weisman.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the President Evaluation Facilitation Services. So the board, you should have all received and had the opportunity to review the proposal from the Oregon School Board Association to facilitate the evaluation process for President Bolger in her 3rd year as president at LCC. And so the recommendation is to approve the facilitation services agreement with the total cost to not exceed $7,528. And just so as a reminder, when we spoke last time, we wanted to have a proposal that did a little bit more than the original OSBA proposal, but did not cost nearly as much as the alternative. Julie and Austin and I were able to meet with Vince Adams on Monday, and we provided some feedback on that previous proposal, which made its way into this updated proposal. And then we'll be meeting with them again to finalize that process. I think when Vince presents in a little bit, we'll get some more information on what groups would be getting interviews and survey questions. And so if the board wants to weigh in on that, just know that you'll have time tonight or after this board meeting to recommend alternatives in terms of who's on that list of people to reach out to. And so with that, unless there's discussion, I would ask for a motion, and then we're going to have a 20-minute presentation from Vince on how this is going to roll out. Kevin.
I move that the board approve the chief executive evaluation process as proposed by the Oregon School Boards Association as outlined in the board docs.
I second.
Got Julie as a second. Any discussion? Okay, not seeing any, we'll ask. Go ahead, Steve.
I just had one question for President Bolger, for Stephanie. At the end of the day, right, the thing is meant to be, facilitate a process and a discussion that's productive, constructive, strengthens relationships, creates opportunities, for growth, et cetera. And I just wanted to hear from you if you feel that, what we're about to approve here achieves that.
Oh, sure. Yes, I do. I was part of all of the discussions, the smaller group discussion, and Vince and I talk fairly frequently. So I'm very, very comfortable.
Okay. Could you do a roll call, please?
Kevin Alltucker,
Aye.
Denise Diamond,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Zach Mulholland,
Aye.
Julie Weisman.
Aye.
Thank you for that. The motion passes. So with that, we will be moving on to discussion items, starting with the first quarter financial update, and then moving on to board policies and president evaluation standards.
Yes, I will ask Kara to present the first quarter financial update for fiscal year 25. Kara?
Hi. And I'm not sure if it will be helpful to pull up the document, Brett, or not. So I'll get started. You have a handout, a report. I didn't do a presentation form, but if there's a preference, I'm certainly open to feedback. This is just more my style, how I'm used to doing that, but I want to make sure it's something that's conducive and readable for you. So the goals of this report that I wanted to present to you, there's a couple of things. One, I added a little context of a review of just looking at trends and things back to fiscal year 2019, which is pre-pandemic levels. So just to give some context of what things financially may have looked like pre-pandemic. We're going to look at the fiscal year 25 actuals, budget actuals, comparison to fiscal year 24 and what we're projecting, and then a forecast of what we're looking at up to fiscal year 2029, which is one of the commitments we had to the board. And then at the end, I'm going to just wrap up with What are some key takeaways that as a board I would challenge you to think about? What are some things we're doing as communicating and transparency to the college? And then what it is I would need from you and the items that we need to look forward to as we continue to work through financials. So there's a lot of information on that report. If it's helpful, I left that in there. I'll go to page 2. So page 2 is where I'm just taking a look at what fiscal year 2019 looked at compared to 2024. There's, of course, the 2 sections you may be used to. It's really 3 sections, but resources being, revenue resources for the college. The next 2, personnel and other expenditures. Those are expenses. So if you want to simplify it, revenue and expenditures, and then a net position at the end of the year. There's a couple of things I wanted to look at. When you look back to fiscal year 2019, one of the really interesting things I noticed as I look at this is the college was overspending what they brought in revenue that year by $4 million. So I would always caution not to have that picture, but that must have been, a lot of challenges that year. I couldn't speak to that. But if you go forward to what fiscal year 2020, it was still overspending. They were still overspending that year. You get into fiscal year 21, and I'm really jumping to the bottom line because those are focuses, but we can highlight some of the areas if you want to talk about. But come fiscal year 2021, started to recoup that. But what I'll draw your attention to is under federal revenue. Am I going to? Oh,
No, he's just trying to get him to.
He's
go
trying.
to the bottom.
Oh,
Here's your net
I know.
numbers.
There we go.
There you go. Down the bottom. There you
Oh, so bottom. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. If I go too fast, please let me know. So yeah, down at the bottom there, you can see the net operating position is what I'm focused on. So that's really taking the current year revenues minus the current year expenditures. So that year in a snapshot, you would hope within 1 year, you want to really sustain what you're doing so your ending fund balance stays intact. That didn't happen in 2019, whatever reason. 2020 still was over, but come 2021 and 2022, it started to look a little healthier. But unfortunately, if Brett scrolls up a little more to the revenues, if you draw your attention to the federal revenue line, you're going to see that come 2021, there's 4.8 million, 22, there's 4 million, and then 23, there's another 1.3. There's federal pandemic money. So if you were to exclude that one-time surge of revenue, that picture wouldn't look so good. And so fortunately for the college, all of that money is what's helped build an ending fund balance. So our goal and our challenge would be to maintain that ending fund balance and continue to operate with that, the board's goal is 10%, right? So keeping that in mind. I have a lot of notes. So costs from fiscal year 2019 have obviously increased. Cost of insurance is up. I was talking with President Bolger earlier. We all talk about the toilet paper crisis happened in there. Everything just influxed a good 30% is what we saw. Now I didn't go look at CPI index, but everything costs more. Not only does everything cost more, but so do people. So the wages from 2019 till 2024 have increased. Just expenditure, not number of people, was up 13.8%. And at the same time, though, enrollment for the college decreased by, I have it here, 21%. So we have an increase in personnel, but a decrease in enrollment. And that's just something we have to consider and remember as we continue to grow in enrollment. One of the things, people, hiring good people and having competitive wages is what keeps people here at the college, right? But we also have to look at how we grow that enrollment. Yes.
Clarification. So what was the percentage increase in staff?
It just staff costs. So I'm saying the total cost of staff. I'm not saying the number of staff
Okay. So
is 13.8% from 2019 to 2024.
what was the increase in the number of staff?
I don't know because we don't have the final 2024 numbers. So that I couldn't get you yet, but I can get it to you.
So our employment costs went up by how much?
Just overall cost was 13.8%.
And how much did our tuition costs go up?
That tuition cost, so the cost per student, the per student credit tuition went up 27%.
Okay, which should cover the increased costs ostensibly with the same number of students.
Well, it's just it's a proportion of a full number. So the cost of, if you look at the cost of staff personnel, if we, let's just pick on 24, it's 77 million, 77.2 million was the total cost of staff in 2024, all staff. The cost of the tuition revenue is 23.2 million.
Okay, thanks.
So they're proportional based on where they started, right? So,
Do you want questions? Sorry, I sort of screwed up by interrupting and asking a question. You want questions now or at the end?
now is fine. Now is fine.
Okay, Steve, I'd seen you raise your hand.
I did. I figured it out. I had a math question, but I
Austin,
can
go
figure it
ahead.
out. Yeah.
That's the best kind of question.
Yeah.
There is a term that was used in regards to and I'm completely forgetting it and I apologize, but it's essentially where we have openings and we don't fill those openings. And it was a wonderful financial term that was used during budgeting last year, which was, oh my goodness.
Vacancy savings. We're not saying swirl anymore, but vacancy savings is a great term.
But I love it. I love swirl. That was such a good term.
I know it's a magical term, but vacancy savings is a pretty widely used term.
Understood. Yes. Now, do these numbers include that?
These numbers just include at the end of the day what was spent.
Understood. Thank you.
These are actuals.
Actuals. Okay. Yes. And let me also qualify, fiscal year 2024 is unaudited. I'm going to keep qualifying that. We are still going through an audit. There is a possibility of adjustment if there's something that's found, but these are what we've turned into our auditors. We believe these are the numbers. So I'm always going to qualify that until our audit's finished and in your hot little hands.
Understood. Thank you.
So there's a lot of information on this. If we flip to the other page, I just wanted to highlight a couple of areas. There you go. So out of this, what I'm trying to let you visually see is what I was just talking about, what gets us to what I would call the end game for the year, which is your ending fund balance. So the resources being your revenue for the year and your expenditures. If you look at between fiscal year 2019 and 2024, there was 4 years that we exceeded what we brought in as revenue. Now, 2 of those years, actually one of the 2, one of them it would have been almost even without all the federal pandemic revenue would have exceeded what was brought in for the year. So just pointing out, something we really should focus on. The chart below that, one of the things that I want to challenge us to really think about is the increase from, it's pretty up and down, which makes sense because we went through a pandemic. There was a lot of things happening, but the change from 2023 to 2024 is 7.5%, which is a pretty big change for 1 year. Now, at the same time, the enrollment was up substantially. Part-time staff were brought in, that increased, salaries increased. There was a lot of changes in there. That's just something we want to keep our eye on. If we continue to grow like that, it's going to be a challenge to continue to keep up, but that will be something we'll also talk about. So any questions on those two? Just giving you. Numbers are fun, people.
I love them.
Okay, trying it out. Okay, so the next page is our snapshot of our budget of this year. I left on, again, the unaudited 2024 status where we're at. 2025 budget, and this is general fund only, unaudited. Our year-to-date expenditures through the first quarter, so that's going to be really through September 30th. What the burn rate looks like. And the next column is where our forecasted financial picture is. I always caution we're early on in the year and there's a couple target areas I really want to point out that are to watch, if I were to say a right term. So in the top section with just revenues, if I just start there, federal revenue of 1.4 million, 1.2 million of that 1.4 is still the ERTC, the federal money that we applied for. I have called the feds. We do have our application in line. We don't know if we're going to get that money. And that's 1.2 million of that. And if we don't get it and they deny that, there's a very good possibility that, well, if they don't give it to us, that 1.2 million is gone. So that's off the revenue line already. That's gone. The other areas that we really have to continue to watch, I always watch property taxes. This area, what we collect in property taxes is really important. It can be volatile. If you have large companies or places that contest their taxes or don't think they have to pay it, it can affect that depending on what they are. The good news is out of the 4 counties that we collect taxes is the collection rate is pretty good. You know, I went back and looked at it, came from Wasco County. That wasn't a great collection area, but here it's in the high 90s. So that's likely a good one, but there's still possibilities. So that's an area to watch. And then tuition. The jump from tuition from fiscal year 2024 of 23 million to 28 million is attributed, 1, you know, an increase in tuition cost, and 2, an increase in enrollment. But that's assuming that, you know, all the students are going to pay their tuition and that the enrollment's going to come in as we're expecting for the next 2 terms as well. So it's very contingent on all those situations happening. If we go down to expenditures, you know, our personnel costs, we're building in what we know today, positions that we know were key moving forward. And the same with expenditures. There could easily be something for a college this size that could come up, that could be several $100,000. It could dip us either way. So I always caution, we're really early in the game. But when you look at the ending balance, we're still looking like we're overspending by 1.5 million for this year. So we're continuing this pattern of dipping into an ending fund balance, right? What I do want to point out on a positive note, because finance people are always the fun killers of the group, but you know, if our budget's 109 million in total resources, we are looking at collecting at 111. So it's almost 1.92 million more. But we're also in expenditures. When you look at that, we're at 102 million and we're projecting 104. So we're 2.3 million in expenditures too. So yeah.
I think you would say that there's some piece of that ending fund balance that you should, you know, be okay with spending year to year to just, you know, cushion steep rises and declines that happen year to year to try to, you know, smooth that out a little bit. Obviously, you can't afford to spend it all, and you wouldn't want to be on a trajectory where you're doing that multiple years in a row. But would you say at all that there's any piece of that at all that it's okay to dip into every whatever so many years in order to, you know, to ride out a tough period of time?
It's possible. If it depends on the tough period, we're in higher enrollment, you know, we're bringing in more students, we're bringing more revenue with that. So we're not in a emergent situation. So I would save an ending fund balance for something like we're having a crisis year. Let's say
Yeah,
you
I
admit.
wasn't looking for permission for this year, but just more
Yeah,
theoretically.
future years. Okay. I'm not opposed to it if contingents, but you know, finance people are always going to want to see a good, solid fund balance. What you don't want to be is in a situation where I left, school districts rely on, they don't balance their state school fund until May. And you don't know, actually it's March. So you don't know that you don't have enrollment until they could true it up. You don't have an opportunity to fix that. And if you don't have an ending fund balance, you cut people then, right? And so the worst case scenario for finance people is to end up in a situation where something catastrophic happens, you haven't planned ahead and you have to cut people. That is the worst feeling. And I've been in that situation. It's not pretty. So I would preserve as much as possible to plan for the future, especially as an ongoing pattern. If our ongoing pattern is to continue to dipping into the ending fund balance, we have a pattern. So we really need to look at that and address that. Does that make sense? It's hard for a finance person to go,
Yeah,
yes,
I
spend
mean,
the
and
money.
then somebody, you know, in our, I get, so it's I appreciate your position on this. And I'm not all that different from it. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate. It's kind of fun. But the people in our position are, you know, we have a somewhat different perspective on the situation. We might look at this and say, well, we dip into our balance, you know, or our cash reserves every so often, and hey, we're still here, and I don't know what else we would have done. So, I mean, what's your answer to that?
We can still be here. If we had not had federal pandemic money, we wouldn't be. And that's not coming in the future.
Maybe.
So far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Knocking on wood and doing all the
just playing
whatever.
devil's advocate, but
yeah.
Nonetheless. Yeah.
No, I understand. Yep. I get what you're saying.
I have a couple questions about this year and then the next slide as well with the future years forecasts. It looks like one of the really big differences between our approved budget and the expected expenditures is in transfers out. And it looks like in future years, there's very large increases to both transfers out and capital outlay compared to the last few years, maybe catching up to what capital outlays had looked like 10 years ago. Can you talk about what is the discrepancy about 1.6 million for transfers out for this year? And then when we get to the next slide, If you can comment on the growth in those two areas, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and so the transfers out this year is the part of the payback that the board had approved. We need to include that in what our spending plans is. So we talked about the additional million being moved to all those deficits in the Fund 9 program. That's what that is. So we need to transfer the budget there to cover that.
Okay, so the 1.6 million deficit there is actually going to other funds that are
Yes.
currently in deficit.
And there is a 240,000 that we have one particular fund in our debt service fund that has been negative. We have to fix that. It can't continue to be that way because it's one of the college finance loans. It's actually for the downtown center, and it's been historically a negative sub fund. This is one of the ones I've talked about. We have to fix it because it's also in the same fund that we have general obligation bonds, and we are loaning general obligation bond money, which is taxpayer money, to cover this downtown program. We have to fix that this year. So that's included in that too.
Okay, and can you remind me about what is the amount of the current fund deficit that we need to repay over the next few years?
That I'm going to get to you in the next meeting. I will have that information for you. We're working on, what I want to do is there's a lot of account reconciliations that also aren't included here. So last time I gave you an update that when we talk about the end of the audit, we had about $600,000 of cleanup things of old accounts that we cleaned up. We're still working on some of those. And I want to make sure some of those sub-fund deficits aren't some account cleanup things. So we're processing through all that right now. And that is one of my pauses for concern is if there's other accounts that we need to clean up that haven't been reconciled, that we have to make adjustments to do. I want to make sure we've accounted for all those before I give them all to you. So yes, that's where the last number I think that we saw in Fund 9 was 4 million.
4 million to
Yeah.
be paid back over a time period.
Yes, but there's other funds.
And
So
this is attacking the first maybe $1 million of that.
yeah. And so one of the items I want to point out and have a discussion with that will lead into the next slide, and I will address your question when we get there too, is one of the things that if you imagine you're a dean and we give you a budget, so we give you, I'm going to pick on health professions, we give them $500,000 to buy gurneys or something. I'm totally making this up, and I'm not picking on health professions. Did you see? But let's pretend. So then what the college has done in the past, though, is we've expected this ending fund balance of 10%, but we've only ever budgeted 3%. And so the hope is exactly what you brought up, or Austin, I think it was you. I think the anticipation is between vacancy savings and underspending, you keep your ending fund balance, right? But if you're a dean and you're spending your $500,000, so this year everyone's like, we've had so many pauses for so many years, I'm going to spend my $500,000 because we've needed all these things. We're not leaving ourselves the ending fund balance we need to leave ourselves. So what I'm seeing is that the college is going to perpetually be in this, we're overspending, we have to reduce it because we're eating into our ending fund balance because we never budget a 10% ending fund balance. We budget a 3% ending fund balance. I know this is an epiphany, and it's not anybody, it's just how it's set up. So I just want to point this out as something we should discuss and think about, because if we've allocated all of it, but the ending fund balance is only 3% and people are spending what they're allocated, they're still eating into your ending fund balance. That's the end game that happens. So I think, unfortunately, the college gets to a point, and I just experience it as we walk out and talk to people. They're like, we've had to cut every year. And I think that's part of the problem of cutting every year, is because if you spend what you expect to be allocated and you spend it all, you have now eaten into funding your ending fund balance. Now the gap between what we budgeted for the ending fund balance, which was 3 million, and a 10% is 7 million. And that's a pretty large gap. I know. This is.
Sorry, I'm still a little confused. What is the difference? I thought we approved in our approved budget, we approved that transfer out. And I don't know where the additional $1.6 million transfer came from that we had not approved.
I think it just was missed in budget. So it's a correction we need to.
When we approved the budget in the spring,
it had all the normal transfers, but the added on $1 million was missed. That's what I'm saying. That added on $1 million.
So when we went through this process in the spring, the math wasn't done right. which is why we're getting this additional $1.5 million deficit showing up now.
In the budget, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that was some math. So when we approved our budget, there was $1 million discrepancy in the budget that we approved.
Unless I'm looking at Jonathan to make sure that's what I'm reading, but yeah, I think
Jonathan can clarify.
he can.
So when we talked about the repayment plan to Fund 9, we started that payment plan in FY24, and we didn't do it in FY24 because we needed to wait to see what the ending fund balance was for 24 yet. So we budgeted in the adopted budget the second installment of that. The additional 1.2 or 1.1 is for FY24's payment plan.
So when we approved the budget in the spring, was the amount for transfers out that we approved 2.674 or 4.281?
It's 2.6. But then what we're saying is we are intending to add 1.1 to that to do last year's payment of the payment plan to Fund 9.
So in FY24, we did not pay the $1 million that we had planned to pay.
Correct.
And that's being made up now.
Correct.
And that's why we're showing $1 million deficit, is because we're doing an extra $1 million for the prior year where we had not done that.
Right. We essentially held that payment because by the time we got to the adopted budget in the spring, when we talked about doing that payment plan, it was too late to do a supplemental budget for 24.
So we're doing 2-something million this year instead of the 1 million we'd planned.
Correct. That's what that is.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve.
So if I'm reading this right, we have this significant amount of transfer out, and based on, I think, what this burn rate says, 22% of it is, we don't do it in a lump sum. We do it in whatever chunks each quarter or something like that. Wouldn't, given the situation you're describing for us, wouldn't we be better off to hold that to the end of the year and see where we're at, and then do a lump sum transfer based on what what kind of position we're in?
We can hold the 1.1 and the additional of the rest of the transfers is to cover debt and other obligations that have to be met. And part of it goes to the health clinic and some of those areas. So we have to transfer those.
Okay, but there is.
But we could hold the 1.1 towards later in the year.
It's optional in a sense.
It could be. We're kicking the can down the road, but it could be.
But if given what you're telling us, that is a place where we could hold off for a while.
We could.
Move on to the next slide. Oh, and then Denise looks like has a question as well. Denise, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you remind me what falls into the category of capital outlay?
I was like, where'd he go? He knows way more of the detail in there. What's in other than equipment?
So it's like it's pretty much the big projects that we do on campus, but it's not. It's like remodeling. It's like setting aside money for big equipment replacement purchases, things like that. It's not. It's above and beyond your material and supplies, your operational kind of OpEx stuff that we normally have day to day.
Sorry, it just seems to be really varied. More than most categories.
And that will be, like Jonathan's saying, that'll also be dependent on what you needed to fix and what meets that threshold. Because it also includes equipment items, so things that are over $10,000 for one item.
I'm going to ask that we go another 10 minutes on this. We're out of time currently, but if we can get through the rest of the slideshow and then have any final questions.
Okay. So the next page is same information, but forecast for 5 years. What I will refer you to is the glossary on the next page. These are the assumptions that we're using to go into the next years. And what's concerning is one more is down there is that we're depleting a lot of our resources by the end of fiscal year 2029. And slowly that's going to slowly deplete what you're expected. So if everything stays on track with all the assumptions we have on the next page, that's going to deplete your ending fund balance.
And can you talk about the outlays and the the transfers in that out, it looks like can you scroll up a tiny bit? So it looks like, we're going from capital outlay, 800,000 to 6 million, transfers out from 2 million last year to 6 million in 2029. Can you cover what we're expecting to pay for with those increases in capital outlay and transfers out?
And so some of the transfers out is going to be related to debt, and some of it's related to a % increase. And I can get you the breakout of which is which.
What debt?
Any of the debt that comes out of your general fund. So we have a couple. We have the downtown court. We also have a QSEB bond, which is an energy bond. I think it's also related to downtown or one of the offline campuses. It's been on the books for years. And there's one other one. So the PERS bond is also another debt you have, but that's built into all of our OPE rates.
So what's the large increase for these two spaces coming from?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you just
What's
said.
the large increase for those two?
Yeah, it's related to both of those, but I can split those out for you.
Yeah.
I don't have them with me today right here, but I can split those out for you.
Okay, so there's
Listen.
some amount of debt we're going to have to start paying out of that fund.
Yeah, because the transfers go into the other funds, so it goes into your debt service fund. And so part of it is our payback, part of it is what will be on our debt schedule.
So that's the transfers out is part
Yes.
increases in debt and part a percentage increase.
Yes.
And then on the capital outlay, the increase from 800,000 to 6 million, what would that be about?
Was there something built in for 6 million?
I'm sorry, Chair, which line?
Capital outlay under other expenditures is proposed to grow from 800,000 to 6 million over 5 years.
I'm not sure. I'd have to get that for you another time in the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate some additional context for those two areas because that looks like what's driving the majority of our cost increases above and beyond what, would be sort of standard, it looks like. So that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
For any of the new buildings, any of the capitalized equipment or expenses related to our improvement of our new buildings?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's what, I'm just
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
assumption.
It's extra $5 million a year, and I'd like to know what the plan is to spend that money on. And then I think the other piece that's sort of missing here is that global context of how our assets and our debts are growing over time. If we have a balanced budget, but our deferred maintenance is growing $5 or $10 million a year, is it really a balanced budget? I think that's a question that I have. And just so knowing that, okay, if we're putting extra money into capital outlay or transfers out, or, one of these other spaces, how are our long-term liabilities growing or reducing over time based upon the budgets that we're passing?
Yeah. Okay.
A couple of questions. How do you, or if at all, factor in our capital campaign into the out years?
It's not specifically factored into there. So if there's a capital campaign for, another bond, it would be built, we'd have to build that into our general fund.
Okay, right, because we have a capital campaign. I think in part it's meant to fund some of these big capital purchases potentially. I don't think we're getting ahead of ourselves, but there's a resource that's not counted in this in this forecast at this point in time.
Yeah. So you're referring to like the foundation
That's what I meant.
capital
Yeah.
campaign. Yeah, that's not counted into here.
Okay.
I thought you were talking something
That's
else.
fine.
Mhm.
And then this, I'm looking at the glossary, the state funding for the next biennium and the one thereafter. Are I assume you're using conservative estimates. You're not relying on, a big gift from the state that we would, that we have no reason to expect.
No, I mean, that would be nice. So we do know, and that's one of my notes I missed over, sorry. The governor's budget was released since this document was produced, so it's built in at 5%. We know the governor's budget is built in at 7% right now, which we're less than excited about. But the difference between what we have in here, built in here in the next 2-year forecast, even if we just focus on the next 2 years, is only $636,000 each year more. So it's not substantially more, and it wouldn't even make up for if we didn't get the ERTC money or if tuition didn't come true, that it's not substantial. So unless they get to more like 9%, we're not that excited.
Okay.
Right.
And then this is all really useful. And I get that, there's so many factors, right, that can impact things, especially when we look out 3 or 4 years. But it's interesting to see what's driving what. The other thing that I don't see here, maybe it doesn't need to be here, was it a couple of years ago, right? We took out that, oh gosh, I forget, $50 million bond, right, that we put in the market to help pay for.
69. Mhm.
Thank you. Sorry. Where is the obligation on repaying that factored in?
That's technically in our debt service fund. And that's the one that I'm saying we build into our other personnel expenditure rate. So what you do is you build that on a per FTE cost, and that is pooled into another account that then's transferred to our debt service fund. And that payment last year was $13 million, just for context.
Okay. And
there's two bonds in there.
And if the market didn't perform, then we'd be on the hook for balancing that out of our own reserves.
Yeah, but we would make sure that it's built into our rates to cover that.
I'm mostly reminding myself of
Yes.
things that are going on that are not exactly represented in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of context in all the numbers. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Denise? You don't have a question?
Well, no, I was, how did you choose the COLA for 5 years at 3.50? Why, is that the lowest COLA, or where's that number coming from?
That was a factor that I think was used before, right?
Yeah. 3.5% is more or less based on, we look at a combination of the CPI, the HEPI, and then we also look at our step increases on personnel. So it's kind of a blended rate. It's a minimum, so it could go higher than that. It fluctuates quite a bit from year to year.
And these are estimations for forecasting purposes only. Things are going as things come out and come around. It could be different, but it's just for the purposes of having an out year forecast.
For the percent of the state allocation that LCC gets, do we have a historical number? Like, do we know what we were getting 15, 20 years ago? It seems like we've had maybe larger enrollment drops in other parts of the state, so we're getting a lower percentage of that total.
In 2008, we received roughly 12 to 13% of the total pie of the Community College Support Fund.
Okay.
And so it's been a combination of some of the other larger community colleges in the Valley growing in size, and us, we shrank quicker than some of the other colleges as well.
Okay. And is there any thought to opportunities to capture a larger share of that in the future?
Well, there is, but the population of our area is not growing at the same rate as some of the other community college districts in the state. So we could get incredibly creative, and we're trying various things with marketing, but we won't compete with some of the population growth that's occurring in some of the other areas.
Thank you.
And we are looking into exploring non-credit FTE. So one thing we've discussed is that was a much larger, robust program pre-pandemic. Now, non-credit FTE is an area we could certainly be looking at that could capture a different population. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Are we at the end of the slideshow?
Yeah, I just had a couple of follow-up thoughts. There's information I will certainly get back to you, but what I want to communicate with you is what we're doing from here is our goal is to go out and meet with budget managers, meet with all the areas, have discussions about where we're at, what our numbers look like, what specifically can we do to help them, and get that information out there. We're about transparency and making sure that we're building in the things that they need, and also planning for our budget future. Also taking in that picture of outward look of, we're expanding new programs, we have new areas, we do have fiscal challenges coming up. Even maybe the outward years, we need to look at what you're saying with those projections, but we are still continuing to dip into our fund balance, and there's a lot of unknowns that don't happen through the year. So as fiscal people, I just want to make sure everybody's armed with the right information. I also want to look at, we will take this information back to our budget development subcommittee. They've been a great committee to work with. We'll continue to go through them, strategize with them, go over this information. You'll see me in the next January, February, we'll start talking about budget strategies and some of those foundational things. and we need to continue to plan and monitor. What I'm asking for you to consider as we move forward is that ending fund balance discussion and a sustainability. I think we need to look at budgeting in and allowing budget managers the ability. So when we continue to budget and expect an ending fund balance, we need to give some flexibility in order to, make budget to right size the budget to keep the ending fund balance. We are cutting back our travel budget by 10%, not our professional development funds, not any of there's faculty and classified and management. We're doing a 5% budget reduction on our operating supply, and we're looking at positions as they come up so we can strategize. We have a lot of things happening through the rest of the year and a lot of unknowns that we need to continue to look at. So those are some factors. So keep in mind some of those things. And a couple other things as we plan for the future. I'm just going to put a bug in your ear. As I've grown into this and met with some of my counterparts, Lane Community College is the highest community college per credit tuition. We are the highest cost college. So we really should consider and think about that and just keep strategizing. Now Lynn Benton is the next one closest to us on the per credit one, but just keep that in mind.
Not on total costs, which includes the other stuff, the fees and all that.
Mandatory fees were the highest and per credit tuition were the highest. What I couldn't tell you about is all the deferred fees. Differential. I'm like, what's the right word? Differential fees.
Okay, I thought the chart we saw last year said we were about third or fourth, but maybe that's.
Yes, but there was a nuance where they capped our credits. So when you look at the same credits, we're the highest cost college.
Thank you. And then just one last follow-up on the projected enrollment numbers for this year, where if we could pull those up again really fast. We had adopted a budget that I think assumed a 2.5% enrollment increase, but this term we had about an 8% enrollment increase, if I recall correctly.
I think we were at 6% in the first term when we ended that, and we built in 3%.
Okay, so if you could go up to, I think, 2 or 3 slides.
Yeah, it's up to the 25 budget area where you look at the tuition. One more. And this is where Jonathan does a fabulous job, but he's looked at I'll let him explain how we've come up with tuition.
The 28 million, just if you could just tell us how that's calculated. Is that using the 6% or the 2.5% or some combination?
So that's using 6% of total growth on revenue, not so much enrollment headcount, but we look at how much our credits have increased year over year. And that's what that 6.9% is. And we use IR data from institutional research, and we collaborate with Kathy Thomas in that area to kind of crunch those numbers.
Okay, so that's based upon some percentage increase in credits and some percentage increase in dollars per credit?
Yes. So it's credits times tuition rate on average. So each student is different in how much they pay, but we kind of blend those together to get that 6.6%.
Assuming the growth we had this term continues for the next 2 terms.
Correct. Right. And that includes retention, focusing on retention term over term. So yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, we've gone over on this. Are we done with this, everyone? Apologies for keeping you so long.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I move that we move discussion item C to the next item. So we would switch positions. So sorry, Brett. Board policies would follow the president's evaluation standards presentation by Vince Adams.
Are there any problems with that? If not, then yeah, I think we can just do that by acclamation. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Yeah, that sounds fine. We can get through that first.
I'd like to go ahead and introduce Vince Adams and to lead this discussion. Thank you, Vince.
Thank you for having me back. Before I dive into president evaluation, I'd like to take a coaching moment and just make a suggestion to the board. You just received a very detailed and rich report that is, consequential for the college. I would suggest that you move the discussions like this into a work session. So governing boards operate in 2 modes. And right now, the board is operating in its governance mode. It's what we're most comfortable with when you're making decisions. You're in a business meeting. But there's also a receptive mode, because we elect these lay boards to govern our institutions, and it's important that staff skill up and educate the board so that they can make informed decisions. This was a very dense report. There was a lot more that your staff wants to share with you, but you don't have the time. Also, I'm looking at the board. It's now 8:24, and I can tell just looking at your eyes, you're already fatigued. And so it's hard to process dense information like this. So moving items like this to the front of the agenda and then really setting the time to flatten out the arrangement of the room. So we're not looking at a board in its governance mode, but sitting with staff and having an opportunity to learn. So it's something to consider. So president evaluation. So it was a few weeks ago when the president reached out to me with the suggestion of taking a look at how the board is approaching evaluation of the president. Chief executive evaluation is something that we do often at Oregon School Boards Association, of course, most typically in the K-12 realm. But the reality is that chief executive evaluation isn't that much different than, in different venues, certainly between K-12 and with the president. Now, the board has put a lot of energy into the evaluation structure that you have, and it's really focused on the president's goals. But what the president suggested was using some nationally normed competencies from the American Association of Community Colleges as a way to add some standards that are, of course, nationally normed, best practices to bring a little more detail and to the evaluation process. So that document was shared with me. It's the American Association of Community College competencies for executives, and we looked at the CEO section. Using that document, I was able to generate a set of standards and indicators mapped over. Now, when I brought this over, the competencies are quite detailed. When I got it in a Word document, it's actually 26 pages long, which is far too cumbersome for a board to use in an evaluation, or at least an efficient evaluation process. It got into a high level of detail, and it makes sense because the competencies document is not calibrated for governing boards. It's calibrated for executive professionals and them skilling up in their professional development. So switching over into a more compact set of standards makes a lot of sense. That is the first document that was shared with you. And so it's a set of 8 standards with, 4 to 6 indicators under each of those. So that would be in addition to the evaluating on the president's goals. Now, another document that we generated, it was yesterday. We crosswalked, and this was feedback from the subcommittee when we met on Monday, was that they really wanted to see a crosswalk between these standards, these nationally normed standards, and the president's goals. And so I went back, looked at that, and mapped those across. And that's the other document that you have. So, and you can see, looking at that document, let me pop over to that, that there's a number of these standards that map very nicely onto the president's goals and make a lot of sense here. So adding on these standards it's not supplanting, and I think that's the key thing, the key idea that I want to get across to the board, that we're not supplanting the focus on the president's goals. President's goals, and same for in the K-12 world, we have superintendent goals. Those are an important and essential part of the evaluation process. And so going forward, and I'll walk you through this process very quickly that we'll go through over, that we're proposing. And thank you for accepting the proposal, but that we'll be doing over the course of this year. The president will be providing artifacts on both her goals, but also these standards. And so it's in addition. So I want to pause there and see if there are any questions with regards to the standards themselves or how they map over onto the president's goals.
Not seeing any.
Awesome. So one of the pieces of homework that I have tonight is that I need to identify some standards, and you have those standards in front of you that we'll be surveying on. So why don't we walk through this through the proposal document? So at the top it says proposal chief executive evaluation process. It's what you evaluated and voted on just a little bit ago. You'll see on December 4th, that's where we are right now. Really just orienting to this process, which is what I'm going to go over. And then one of the things that we have to do is targeted feedback survey. It says TFS planning. Those are those standards. It should look like. Do you have that document? The proposal document?
It's just not printed.
Okay. So jump online. Because we're going to walk through the calendar on that document.
Are you on the standards or the calendar?
I want the calendar on the proposal document.
Oh, just the calendar?
Yeah.
Okay, we do.
There it is.
Sorry, I thought you wanted the proposal document.
This is the proposal document. So you can see we're on December 4th. One of the things that I need to get from you is that TFS planning component. On December 18th, you're going to check in with the president. In a normal year, when thinking about executive evaluation, we recommend 3 of these check-ins in addition to the actual evaluation session. It's much easier to recalibrate mid-year than to do a major correction at the end of the year. So we always encourage using check-in sessions as much as you need. Last year, I worked with the school district where the school board met on a monthly basis with their superintendent because they were navigating a tough situation. Whatever's needed to support the chief executive. So you have that right. You can meet in executive session to discuss executive performance as you need to. So in January, I'll be deploying survey, also be doing focus groups, running really from January into March. So targeted feedback survey. So I provided you a handout on that and the focus groups. Let's see if I have it in front of me. And I want to talk to you a little bit about this targeted feedback survey. So the targeted feedback survey is aligned to the standards that we've developed for the president. So each of the questions will line up nicely with the indicators under each standard. The information that I need from you tonight is which standards you'd like to evaluate on. Now, the president has recommended standards 3, 4, and 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And if you look at the crosswalk document, you'll see that those standards map nicely onto her goals. There are other standards that map on there. I mean, there's a lot of utility in these standards. They do a really good job of explaining executive performance. So it makes sense that there would be multiple, but she is suggesting for us, and I agree with her suggestion, that 3, 4, and 7 make a lot of sense. And just to go to remind us what those are, let me get that document in front of me. 3 is student-centered focus. 4 is strategic resource management, topic you were just talking about. And the 7 is adaptive leadership and change management. So those would be the 3 standards that we would insert in the targeted feedback survey. So the targeted feedback survey is targeted in 2 respects. One, it's those 3 standards. And the reason that I'm constraining you to 3 standards is because there could be as many as 8 indicators under each of these. That could mean that there is a number of questions. And if I distribute a long survey, our response rate will go down. And so in our experience, if we can keep our surveys to about 18 to 20 questions, we get better response rates. And that's why I'm constraining you. So the survey is also targeted with respect to respondents. So this leadership team will identify who the respondents will be to that survey. So you will handpick who it is that are the key informants that can provide the board and the president information to help her in her professional growth. So that I'm not asking for those names tonight, but I want you to start thinking about that because, you know, sometime right after the winter holiday, I'm going to be looking for those names and the email addresses so I can start interacting with those people. I'm also going to need names for the focus groups, okay? Or who is going to be in those focus groups. So in the current proposal, I've planned 4 focus group sessions of 1 hour each, 2 on 2 separate days. That's kind of confusing, but 2 1-hour sessions on 2 separate days. Sorry, it's confusing. It's late. Okay. Any questions?
Well, just in terms of our process, you know, we had this subcommittee of Austin and Julie and I met, provided this initial feedback. I think in terms of the larger group's feedback, what would be very helpful now or before our next subcommittee meeting would be, are those, you know, what are the 3 standards that we want to specifically focus on for our survey is one question that the board, if you can think through and tonight or in the next week respond to, would be very helpful. The second is the list of groups potentially to reach out to for the survey and for the work groups. I might have 1 or 2 that I would maybe deprioritize off this list and others I might prioritize. So if anybody has ideas for how that list should be amended, if you can get those to the president, who can then share them with the subcommittee before we meet again, that would be incredibly helpful.
When you say before we meet again, is that before the 18th or is that early January?
Can you remind me, Celia, when do we have that on the calendar for that next subcommittee meeting? Has that been scheduled yet?
No, I sent an email to get that scheduled, and so far I've heard from Julie.
I think the intent would be hopefully to do it before Christmas break so that Vince can start moving on his process. Would be the hope. Probably about a week or more from today, sometime in the next 2 weeks.
And Celia, you could just, whatever date you come up with, just put it on my calendar and I'll be there.
Okay.
Denise.
So, Zach, as chair, are you going to send the board an email with the specific what you're specifically requesting so it fits the timeline that you're working on? So I heard you say this, you want feedback on standards. I heard you say that you want potentially suggestions of groups. So just to match the timing that the subcommittee's working on, will you be able to send an email to the board for responses and the time frame that you're looking for?
I can work with President Bolger to get that email out to the full board to ask those 2 questions of top 3 standards that you would prefer us to survey on. And if you have any updates to the OSBA Chief Executive Evaluation Process focus group and survey list, that if you have any recommended changes to that, that we can then finalize it and send Vince on his way to do his good work. Okay, and any other questions or comments, or is everybody feeling pretty good about this process?
What do you need? Do you need anything more from us?
No, it sounds like I'm going to get the information I need. Would the board like me to continue going through the calendar just to give you a 30,000-foot view of what this process will look like for the rest of the year? Or I can get out of your way and you can get on with your agenda.
I think
right there.
I think we've read the calendar. I think we've all taken the time to do that. Looks like Austin, do you have another question or follow-up?
No, I just actually wanted to really appreciate you for giving us multiple opportunities to give feedback, give suggestions to the subcommittee. I just think that is a really good addition to this process. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
We'll be
you.
in touch.
Thank you. Have a
you.
great evening.
Thank you.
Okay. And I just want to do with a check-in with the board real quick. I think we are getting pretty late in our agenda. Should we move forward with the agenda as planned, or is there any desire to try and move the first reading of board policies to a future meeting?
Let me just explain that this is some additional, this would be the first read of these policies, and you see them in the board agenda item. It's a catch up because there was a meeting where we didn't have the first read. So this is a little off cycle, and we can certainly, unless I'm not going to check in with Brett, unless there's something that's pressing.
No, I mean, we can table these. We can also, we intentionally gave you hopefully 4 easy policies that don't have substantial changes and thought that it would be a quick agenda item. So it's.
She's on these.
Yeah, neither did I. Austin, go ahead.
I'm okay with moving forward.
Just getting it done tonight?
Yep.
Okay, all right, let's plow through and get it done. Brett, you're up.
All righty. Thank you. Well, real quick, I bring to you this evening 4 policies for a first reading, 3 of which have no recommended revisions whatsoever. There is only one policy that we are recommending a revision to, and that is Board Policy 385, Parliamentary Procedure. The current policy references a current edition. The current edition referenced in the policy is the previous edition of Robert's Rules. And so instead of having to come to you every time a new edition is published, the recommendation is for that policy that we change it to a current edition. Other than that, the other 3 policies have no recommended revisions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I think we're gonna, it'll be on the consent agenda
That's right. We
at
have
the
to do
next
the
meeting.
second one. That's right.
So this is just a time for people to ask any questions if they have questions or make comments.
It will be on the first January meeting agenda. Thank you.
So we'll give a moment. Does anybody have any questions at this time around these policies? And not seeing any, we will move on to our reports.
Thank you. So I would ask all 3 of you to please make your reports very brief. If you can take a minute to do your reports, and then we can move on in the agenda. Thank you.
I think I'm the first one up. Good evening, board members. It's been a long evening, and I will be very brief. You have my report, and I trust that you have reviewed it. I only want to highlight one thing, and I also want to express my gratitude for the work that you do. Today, you just approved the RN to BSN and our associate degree in respiratory therapy. It's a tremendous amount of work that we've been working on for the last few years. I know Grant Matthews is in the room, and he's been absolutely, leading this initiative and, working with faculty and our deans who are not here tonight. We have Jennifer Tavernier and also Corey Miner. This is something that our community has asked us to do, and we are on the HECS agenda next week to get this approved. So after that, it's in front of our accreditor, and then the DOE, and then we hope to be enrolled by next fall. So thank you for everything that you do, and just a huge shout out to everyone on this campus that made this happen. And then I really want to thank Curriculum Committee, and it's a group of people that you never see. They are the ones who look at new courses, they approve programs, and I asked for them to meet out of cycle in order for us to get this program to you in the fall, which is very difficult to do when essentially we aren't really working in governance. We're not up and running until really the first week of October. And they said, yes, it's the right thing to do. It's for our students, and we'll meet and do what we have to do to get it approved. So thanks to everyone, and a huge shout out to everybody on Curriculum Committee.
Thank you.
Shane, would you like to go next?
Yeah, next on the agenda.
Okay.
Good evening. I want to just highlight a few things that are significant. I think we will be launching the call for proposals for the Lean Forward Fund. That was the $300,000 fund that you approved as a part of the budget to invest in strategic investments. The focus this year will be on projects that improve the student experience with an eye towards improving student retention. So very excited about that announcement going out. Members of my staff, Sharon Daniel and Amanda Blunt, have been meeting with focus groups about new employee orientation to try to address some of the issues that came up in the ACRO report that you heard about earlier. And so that work continues, and I'm excited to see the changes that are made. The last thing I want to mention is exciting news that on Monday we met at the bargaining table with LCCEA and were able to come to an agreement regarding in-state residency requirements that protected the college's interests in limiting liability for multi-state labor law compliance. And so we'll be bargaining that more fully in the contract reopener, but have at least frozen the state of play right now, which is a relief. And I think that's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. I'll keep it brief as well. I wanted to let you know about a couple of areas. Recruitment and admissions are doing a lot of work, and we're diversifying how we do what we do. Rosa Maria attended Springfield's high school annual Latino Family Night. Worked with over 100+ students and their families, included information on admissions, Oregon Promise, financial aid, GED, and ESL. And also, I wanted to mention that Rosa Maria and Brenda Williams also had an application workshop at Thurston High School, and they actually had 60 students apply on the spot, got information, got started on FAFSA, and learned about the Oregon Promise. We're also working more now as well, looking at adult student recruitment. And Susie Kakek, she's another recruitment specialist, worked with the Department of Human Services and also WorkSource Lane. So there's a couple of big things we're doing. Academic advising, to give you an idea of how many students you actually meet with. The first 2 weeks of term, over 1,100 students had advising appointments with our academic advisors. Financial aid. The new and improved FAFSA is now open. Early feedback from Kathleen, our financial aid director, is that the issues that plagued the 24-25 application have been resolved, and the experience is intuitive and easy to follow. So that's great news. I wanted to mention there's lots of things I could mention, but please do read it if you get the chance, because our team are doing so many wonderful things. But last thing I wanted to mention as well, tying on to our Sophie, our SGA president, the Titan Food Pantry partnered with the Student Government Association. It's all right. Scooped you.
I forgot.
All right. So the Student Government Association and our Titan Food Pantry partnered over Thanksgiving to assemble and distribute 150 dinner in a bag kits. And these kits provided free meal options, each valued at about $11, and included recipes to help students stretch out their budgets during the holiday season. Again, a real quick overview, but thank you.
Thank you. Good work.
Thank you. Next up is our LCCEA and LCCEF reports.
Good evening, members of the board and President Bulger. I'll be very brief tonight. Shane already mentioned our collaborative agreement that we reached on Monday regarding postponing negotiations on the Oregon residency requirement. And I'd really like to, in particular, thank Shane for his productive approach to this process. It actually only took about 23 minutes for our meeting. And it's a really great example of how we can work together and reach an agreement that supports mutual interests when the administration agrees to meet with us. We are working together with the college and have come up with a plan to establish a learning management advisory team. And thanks to Dean Ian Coronado for his work on really bringing this forward so that we can all review options for maintaining the existing online platform or moving to another option for an online platform for teaching. And we are looking forward to a process that centers teaching and learning in the evaluation of any new learning management system. We're really excited about the news about the governor's budget allocating a 7% increase to the Community College State Support Fund. This is really wonderful. It's not enough. Of course, it's never enough, but starting out with the 7% increase as what's typically the floor for where we're going is much higher than the average over the past 4 biennia. In fact, one biennium had a governor's budget that was flat and another one had a decrease of more than 5%. So a 7% increase is really substantial and good news that should bring us some optimism. Finally, I'd like to echo the public comments and underscore faculty support for the striking workers at Bigfoot and encouraging the board to take action to terminate the contract with Bigfoot. As well as to increase mental health counselor staffing to support our students and help prevent more tragic losses in the future. And for strongly and courageously standing by your own board sanctuary campus resolution. And on a final note, as we approach the end of the term and year and prepare to turn the calendar page to 2025, I hope all of you as board members, President Bulger, members of the administration, and our campus community will really take to heart the public comments that you hear every month. We really appreciate that you hear all of the voices that come from our community to speak to you, and ask that you really take some time to deeply reflect on how LCC will provide ample support to students. With whom do you want LCC to do business? How do you want the employees who work here to be treated? Ultimately, what kind of institution do you want LCC to be? And what will you do to bring that to fruition for the common good for our community? Thank you and good evening.
Frankie, I think it's your turn now.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't hear for a second. I apologize. So good evening, board members and President Bulger. We've held elections and I'd like to report the results to you. We have a new Vice President of Organizing, Mark Jordan, a new Recording Officer, Marlena Pearson, a new Grievance Officer, Alan Cobb. Katie Neal will remain as our only 1039 position, Officer at Large. And finally, I will remain as President for the union for the next 2 years. I'm urging you to cancel any and all contracts our college currently holds with Bigfoot Beverages and encouraging the store on campus to stop stocking Bigfoot beverage products. As you may be aware, the workers at Bigfoot Beverages, represented by Teamsters Locals 206 and 324, are on strike, fighting for their right for fair treatment and to maintain their current pension, which provides greater financial security compared to the proposed changes. It is disheartening to see their trucks stationed in front of our school while the unions on this campus stand in solidarity and our students are negatively impacted by Bigfoot management's practices. The holiday season should be a time of security and togetherness, yet these workers and their families are facing uncertainty and hardship. Instead of being supported by their employer, they're battling against an entity that has failed to prioritize its workers' well-being by maintaining a contractual relationship with Bigfoot Beverages. Our institution risks aligning with the employer that disregards the fundamental rights of its employees. Our college has long held a reputation for supporting our community and standing by those who are struggling. These workers are our neighbors, former students, friends, and community members who simply want to keep their current pension and be treated with respect. At this moment, we have an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to these values by taking a stand for justice and solidarity. Canceling our contracts with Bigfoot Beverages would send a powerful message that our institution does not condone the mistreatment of its workers. It would also reflect the heart of our mission to uplift and support those in our community who need it most. I respectfully ask that you take this matter under serious consideration and make the choice to stand in solidarity with these workers. By doing so, we not only support them during this difficult time, but we also affirm our college's values and commitment to justice. I do have a personal request in the middle of all this. If anyone here is in a position to help, I encourage you to visit the picket lines on McVeigh Highway or Laura Street and bring something to support the workers braving the cold. This could be warm food, hot beverages, hand warmers, or even weatherproofing gear like parkas to help keep them dry. While we have the privilege of being indoors in warm offices, they are out there in the elements 24 hours a day, fighting for a fair and secure future. If you are able, please consider lending a hand and showing them that they are not alone. And finally, I would like to add that LCCEF is in complete solidarity with LCCEA. And I hope that the board will encourage the college's administration to treat LCCEA members with more respect and not to use intimidation tactics against them. Thank you very much, and you all have a good evening.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions or comments regarding information reports? Kevin?
Oh, the information report, sorry. I do have a comment.
Okay, and then so we'll get to the moving on to closing items. Are there any board member questions or comments? And then Kevin, and then it looks like Austin.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Chair. So we've heard from 8 speakers tonight urging the board to take a position on the Bigfoot strike. And this topic came up in our work session 2 weeks ago, and I outlined 4 reasons why I think that is a bad idea for the board. I'm not taking away the passion and the importance of the topic, but we are an elected board. It is our duty to not enmesh ourselves in private conflicts. We have no direct involvement or authority over private companies. It's very important that we maintain neutrality, and we need to do that in the political realm and the social realm. So taking sides on a private labor dispute could alienate students, faculty, and staff that feel differently about some of the positions that we've heard tonight, and could negatively affect the college's ability to successfully pass a bond measure in the future. We depend on a lot of different constituencies for support. Our primary responsibility as an elected educational board is to focus on the educational mission, and that means the financial stability of the college and student success. And finally, if the board were to take a position on this issue, it could potentially set up legal and certainly ethical concerns, and possibly set the board up for conflicts of interest. So I'm not dismissing people's passion over this issue. What I'm pointing out is that we are an elected board, and we have a mission to adhere to, and we must maintain our neutrality. Thank you.
Austin?
I can appreciate what Kevin says. We did hear from a student, an alumnus of our college, community members, faculty, and staff. And quite frankly, in our last meeting, we did discuss a couple different options. One that Julie and Zach came up with, which was actually a board policy in regards to companies that we contract with that are going under strike. I have shot an email over to OCCA of suggestions of board policy that we can consider and bring forward to the board so that in the future, we have board policy that's relevant to this. Additionally, per our contract with Bigfoot Beverage, under section 6.1, under compliance with laws, if there is a law that is broken, which can go up to a ULP, a successful ULP, that allows for the contract to be canceled. Now, I asked for that consideration in the last board meeting 2 weeks ago. Also, I asked, at the very least, a letter from the board stating our disappointment in the labor relations that are occurring. Our legal attorney is reviewing language for a letter like that. In fact, it was a suggestion from our legal attorney, and I'm hoping that we can bring that forward in the near future. Kevin, I understand what you're talking about. I really, really do. But also, if we have a community partner that is not following the law, that's incredibly problematic. Not only for those workers that are out there on the strike line, but also for our students and future employers. So again, I really respect what you're saying. And I hope you can understand also that we also want to work with companies that are following the law and treating workers with dignity and respect.
I have Denise up in the queue. And then it looks like Kevin has a follow-up.
You know, no, I don't want to get into a back and forth. That's not good use of the board's time.
Denise, go ahead.
It's always interesting how we define education. I thought it was very interesting and powerful to hear Resolution 612 that protects in very specific, actionable ways deportation issues. And I think that puts us squarely involved in social issues of our community. At minimum, I think it's a healthy, perhaps you would say compromise of position, or you would just say a healthy action step to put a letter. I don't see any negative consequences or crossing of lines in the construction of a letter that allows for the concern to be expressed. And I think that is the role of the board in responding to our constituents. I understand that there's a wide variety of views, as there always will be, on just about any topic. But I think the board can take an action step that is acceptable, that accomplishes something, and I'd like to see that happen rather than nothing at all.
Any other board member questions or comments before we close? Okay, not seeing anything. Please note that we will be having a special meeting in lieu of a work session on December 18th, and that we will be meeting an executive session at the conclusion of this regular meeting. And so we will be coming back in 10 minutes for that executive session where we'll get a hopefully relatively short presentation